Welcome into the PF. I did it again. Welcome in to Check the Mic. I can't even speak today. This is going to be terrible. Already screwed it up.
Yeah, well, that's a wrap on that show. Let's
welcome into Check
16.
the Mic. Steve Palazzolo and Sam Monson live on YouTube. Steve's got no voice. It's your time to shine, man.
No voice. Can't think straight. You're just a mess over there.
Yeah, 16-game schedule.
It's a good thing it's a short week.
It's going to be a terrible show. It's going to be a terrible show. We hope you join us. Stay with us, whatever you're doing.
Excellent. Good start.
Really good. We'll just restart that.
Oh yeah. That you can do that in live shows.
Tyler over here said this could be my flu game. I said, no, I already had that. I had my strep
Steroid
shot game, and I brought it. You know.
That wasn't available to Michael Jordan. He wasn't able to just shoot up the roids.
You don't know what he had access to back in 96.
I think it's unlikely he would have been allowed to just shoot up the steroid shot that you had.
It's probably a different level of steroid than the illegal kind. You know,
I think all steroids are prohibited substances.
Well, whatever this nurse gave me got me through draft night 2023.
Well, that's the beauty of our industry is that we don't have the same PED restrictions.
We do not have the PED restrictions. So, as you can see, I'm in top form. Before we get started, got to tell everybody about our merch and what we have available, and also tell you this whole thing's brought to you by PrizePicks. So we'll talk about your PrizePicks lineup later here today. There's going to be extra words. There's going to be words omitted. There's going to be wrong companies mentioned.
The guy that's out there grading our performances, this is going to be a rough week for you.
It's like a snow game, right? You just throw it out.
This is the outlier game that drags down your whole season grade.
So could you talk about the merch?
The merch. Okay, we have merch. It's the link to which is in the description. We've got the standard Check the Mic merchandise, which just has our logo on it, but we've also got multiple Shouty Show merchandise options that you can see on the screen there if you are watching on YouTube, or you'll just have to imagine or go to the link if you're listening. We have one that was recommended essentially in the Discord as a take on that old DARE campaign against drugs and alcohol, which I'm unfamiliar with. But
I'm a DARE graduate.
There you go. So we have
Drug
Stop.
Abuse Resistance Education.
There you go.
Proud graduate back in 93, 94.
So instead of DARE, it's STOP, which is I forget what that stood for. But anyway, it's us against the Shouty Shows.
Shouty Take Opposition podcast.
There you go. Awesome. There's a No Shouty Show stamp show, and there's a graphical one as well. So go and get yourself some merch. It's cool stuff. We're trying to keep the margins as low as possible to just make it good stuff to get. And also there's a giveaway. As you can see there by your tweet, we have new Check the Mic merch, giving away free merch next week. And if you send us in your favorite obscure NFL stat or fact, we will pick a couple of winners next week. So you can send it in, either tweet at us or you can email it in, checkthemic@the33rdteam.com. However you want to get it to us, send in your favorite quirky data point or stat, and we'll pick some winners. My favorite so far is the guy that created a sort of standard EPA per blah, blah, blah. The quarterback graphic that just top right is great. That shows at exactly 66 degrees kickoff temperature, Mitchell Trubisky is by far the greatest quarterback that's ever lived. Wow. Tom Brady and Carson Palmer are pretty good, but Mitchell Trubisky, if it's 66 exactly, that's the guy you want.
Which makes me think, if you're a dome team, you can control that.
Yes.
You could set it to 66.
8 games a year. You could have the greatest quarterback.
Think about that in free agency this offseason. Send those in. Appreciate everybody. And as I said, whole thing's brought to you by PrizePicks here today. It's Check the Mic. It's the name of the show.
It is, yeah.
In case you were wondering.
Correct.
You get $50 instantly when you use the code Check the Mic over at PrizePicks. Again, we'll reveal your lineup later today and go through mine as well. Do you have a picks update before we get into our picks?
Yes, I do.
Of course you do.
Yes,
you're keeping track now that you're in the top 10.
I do. Better than that, sir. The Survivor pool, first of all. Remember, we got 2 leagues running in the Discord. You can find links to them in our Discord. Again, the links to the Discord are in the description of the show. We have a Survivor pool running. There are 2 people remaining. It's now a 2-horse race between somebody called Angel Cal and Pop Tree 142. Those 2 are still alive. There are 2 more people that haven't had a wrong answer yet, but they joined later in the league, so they're not every week winners. So 2-horse race with a couple of weeks left. The Pick'em League, 3 people are now tied for first with 120 wins. Guamadon Alex N. El Chobo, which I Googled to check it wasn't something rude in a different language, and our friend M. Barros 2001. All at number 1 with 120 wins. I am all alone in second/fourth place, depending on how you view these things. Wow. 1 game back, 119. I'm 1 off the lead. You are tied for 96th place with 101 wins.
At least we have one expert here.
Harry Palazzolo is also tied for 96.
Oh, we're still tied.
With 101 wins.
We're still tied, huh?
So you guys are, back. But I am 1 game off the lead.
1 undefeated week, and I'm right back in.
And if you factor in the fact that I'm 3-0 and ancillary bullshit that we've been picking, I'm basically out alone.
You're basically the all-time winner. Pretty impressive. Yeah, so join the Discord. Jump in. Have some fun with that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, man, you ready to go?
Yeah.
Let's get through the games.
Let's go.
16 of them. Buffalo Bills at the Detroit Lions. It's Sunday at 4:25. Lions favored by 2.5 per our friends over at FanDuel. The 12-1 Lions taking on the 10-3 Buffalo Bills. I just want to state for the record here, as an unbiased football fan,
yes,
this would be the Super Bowl matchup I would want to see the most for this season.
I think that this is the Super Bowl matchup that most neutrals would want to see. Like, not everybody. You can never please everybody. But, it's difficult to look at these teams in terms of historical story narrative and conclude that this is bad if either one of them wins, right? Buffalo.
But I would feel bad.
4 really straight Super Bowls, losing them all. Detroit haven't won since before it was a Super Bowl, back in the black and white era type of thing. It's hard to think that either one of these teams winning it is a bad thing, ultimately, unless, you have a rooting interest against one of them. So, yeah, I agree. I would like to see this Super Bowl. I think that would be good. And I'm also excited for the matchup. I mean, these are 2 of the best teams in the NFL this season. Buffalo's coming off, a rough game for them. Detroit is not. But I think obviously the most interesting aspect is, the Bills lost, and it was enhancing for Josh Allen's MVP candidacy.
Yeah. Because
their defense couldn't stop anything. So is that going to happen again, or will they actually be able to do something against this juggernaut of a Lions offense?
I was surprised at how bad the Bills' defense looked last week. And not saying it was easy. I think there's 2 things are true.
Yeah.
Great Matthew Stafford is tough to stop. And there's also a lot of open throws.
Correct.
In that secondary. That was last week with the Bills and the Rams. By the way, I think I'm going to speak softly enough that maybe we're on the same length, same volume this
for the
week.
First time ever. Yeah.
So I don't feel bad.
Great.
About coming down to your level here. But I think it's a big test for Buffalo. Another road dome game against a good passing offense, a good overall offense, and showing that they could stop them. I wonder how much of last week is blueprinty against this Buffalo defense.
Yeah.
Because Kansas City didn't have this kind of success a few weeks ago against Buffalo's defense, but the Rams were dominant and almost unstoppable. And the other point here with the Lions, kind of the inverse of what the Bears have been, is fast starters, but inconsistent in the red zone. In the Bears game a couple weeks ago, they were up 10 at the half against Green Bay last week, and they let them back into the game. Can Detroit get up early and then hold a lead?
Right. I mean, it's possibly another game that has shootout written all over it again. I mean, 44-42 was the Rams-Bills game last week. Detroit have played better than the injury list on defense, but at some point, the injury list on defense is pretty overwhelming, and you're going up against Josh Allen and that Buffalo offense that can put up a ton of points regardless of the defense that they're facing. So, big question mark about whether Buffalo's defense is that bad relative to a good offense, and if Detroit can just roll the way they have all season long. And then on the other side, Detroit's defense is so banged up. Can they do anything against Buffalo's offense and Josh Allen? So, it's another game where if it came out a similar dynamic, 30-plus points each side, it wouldn't at all surprise.
Yeah, I wonder how long they can actually do that. I mean, they still have really good players left, right? Maybe the best safety tandem in the league this year in Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch.
Assuming they're healthy. I mean, Branch left that game hurt, right?
Assuming they're healthy. But, Quan Alexander coming off the street to play linebacker.
Right.
And just the revolving door of defensive linemen, it has to catch up at some point. And they played well overall in the Green Bay game, but against this Bills offense, I think that's going to be a challenge.
Definitely. I mean, it feels like the kind of unit where you're waiting for it to have the kind of capitulation that Buffalo had last week, and it hasn't really happened yet. I mean, they've done it in halves where they've given up a ton, but overall, this Lions defense it's held its own relative to expectations given all the injuries.
You got a Gregory Rousseau versus Panay Sewell matchup, which is fun. Von Miller, whenever he's out there as well. Anytime, this Detroit offensive line, I rave about it every single week. Their ability to win in every single way, with speed, with power, with the O-line, with agility, with difficult, matchup players. At this point in the season, the analysis, I think, is simple for a lot of teams.
Yeah.
My thing with the Lions is don't turn the ball over. Goff, he threw a bad pick. Like, he had the 4-pick game a couple weeks ago. That was a bad pick in the second half last week against Green Bay. That's what literally allowed the Packers back in. If Goff takes care of the ball, I think Detroit remains unstoppable offensively. Yeah,
though you also have that, again, same analysis every single week, but Detroit, how they do on fourth down. They are going to give teams high leverage opportunities to swing the game in one direction or the other. Last week against Green Bay, it was 4-1 in their favor, right? They went for it 5 times. They got 4 of them. The 5th one, they failed. It was in their own territory, and Green Bay got a touchdown off that. So just on those plays, you're talking a couple of touchdowns, the game-winning, effectively, conversion, and then a 7-point swing in Green Bay's favor by giving them a short field and setting them up. So, those are 4 of the most important plays in the entire game were all Detroit decisions to go for it on fourth down, and how that goes. So far, they've been working out in Detroit's favor overall, right? In big picture terms. 4-1, it was still enough to win the game. But people have been making the point. The people that hate this aggression and the fourth down decisions of Dan Campbell, they're like, this is why they didn't win in the postseason last year. This is why they're not going to win again this year. A team like Buffalo is the type of team that it could come back to haunt against, right? A good team overall. They might have a game like the Rams game, right? But if they're able to hold on 3 fourth downs, it could be the difference.
I put some numbers to what you're describing with the aggressiveness of the Lions last night for my SMWW class, which I think you can still sign up for, smww.com.
Do I get a discount for signing up?
Yeah, because you've missed the first half of the class. You might get half off.
Cool.
If you want to come join and learn some stuff. But I was looking up some numbers using the PFF fourth down model. And so on plays where the PFF model suggests to kick, either kick or punt, on plays where the model suggests kick, the team that has disagreed with that the most and gone for it is the Lions, 28% of the time. So 28% of the time.
So almost a third of the time the thing says kick. Dan Campbell's still going, screw it, I'm going.
Against a pretty aggressive go-for-it model that PFF has developed, and the Lions are the most aggressive team. So I thought that was fun to kind of confirm what we've been feeling. It's not just the analytics. This is Dan Campbell and his style. And so when we're predicting games, the challenge always is we could talk about sides of the ball and this and that, but it's game flow and some of those one-off plays. What happens in the red zone, what happens on fourth down ends up determining everything.
Yeah, we were kind of lamenting this before going on, that at this point in the season, a lot of the analysis feels the same every single week. It sounds annoying to keep repeating it, but it's a factor every single game the Lions play. Because of that hyper aggression relative to everybody else, they are going to put a ton of high leverage plays on the table that are effectively at risk, right? And if you're able to do that as a defense, if you're able to show up on those plays alone, you can swing the game in your favor massively. So, even if you're like, okay, this Lions offense is unstoppable, they're going to put up a ton of yards, points, etc. If the Bills defense is able to have 3 good plays, it could be the difference.
Yeah. Last point I wanted to make, Buffalo's offense. I think last year there was hints of this. My description of Buffalo's offense this year, ironically, in the Josh Allen MVP year, this is the best, most well-rounded Buffalo offense that Josh Allen's had as far as answers, yak, run the ball, lean on Allen, whatever it might be. So they have answers to everything, and I think that's potentially the difference in this one. I love the Lions, but I think we might overrate what Buffalo looked like last week, and they're going to look much better.
I would assume some kind of bounce back from the Bills, if just because their defense is simply not as bad as it looked last week. Even adjusting for the fact that the Rams are a very good offense and can put up a ton of points. That was, I hesitate to use the word embarrassing, but they almost didn't stop the Rams for the entire game.
Their worst in a while.
Yeah,
in a while. All right, so let's make a pick. Lions by 2.5 here.
Going with Detroit, because why?
Lions fans pay the bills, man.
Lions,
they're paying the bills. Now, I made that point last week, and they didn't cover against Green Bay, right?
I mean, I'm not saying it's
half.
guarantee or anything. I'm just saying that's the way I'm leaning.
By the half point last week. So yeah, Detroit, we love you.
I'm also only using it as like an emblematic, slogan. I'm not actually using that to determine my pick.
Right. So yeah, they pay the bills. We appreciate what you guys bring to the table. My favorite fan base, the Lions. I'm going to take Buffalo to bounce back this week, though, in part because I got to be different. I got to be a little different here down the stretch, trying to catch up.
How are you going to call back? What is it, 18 wins you're trailing?
I'm going to go
in a couple of weeks. That's pretty rough.
To 16-0 week.
We're also clearly just around the corner from me having like a 2-win week and dropping myself back to the middle of the pack again.
Harry's going to take the Lions, so you guys agree.
Nice.
You and 9-year-old Harry.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go Pittsburgh Steelers at the Philadelphia Eagles, the battle for Pennsylvania. So this is going head-to-head with Buffalo and Detroit. This is a wild week. This is going head-to-head with Buffalo and Detroit. Eagles by 5.5 here, over under 42.5 per FanDuel. The 11-2 Eagles hosting the 10-3 Steelers.
Yeah. I think, you got two interesting elements of this game, I think. Obviously, the Pittsburgh defense against Philadelphia's offense is the more interesting side of the ball, at least to me. Particularly how the Steelers perform in the run game, I think. Like, at the moment, the Eagles are leaning on that run game, leaning on Saquon Barkley. At one point, his PrizePicks projection for this game was over 100 yards against a defense as good as Pittsburgh. So, that whole dynamic. Can the Steelers' defense, which is incredibly good, and we've been talking about that defensive front in particular being phenomenal, but we've been talking about it largely through the lens of pass rushing, right? TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, the interior guys, Cameron Hayward. It's an incredible pass rushing unit. It's good against the run, but it's not mind-blowing against the run. Can they clamp down and really stop the Eagles' offense just leaning on them in the run game and force them to the air where they have had more struggles? And that's where the drama has been, right? Is A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts, are they in a good place?
What do you make of that? Well,
it was weird because
what happened this week, so people know, and then
in a nutshell, A.J. Brown made some comments after the game that were interpreted as being sort of unhappy with the general passing game, and then Brandon Graham on his own podcast basically, I don't know his comments, but basically suggested that the two of them are not happy. They're not best buddies anymore. And then he came out and apologized for that. A.J. Brown essentially said he had the wrong end of the stick and, was speaking to someone from the outside and everything's good. I mean, I don't know if you get to that far if everything's good. Anyway.
The question, and I'm a sucker for the context behind things, and I believe the context. A.J. Brown tried to explain the context yesterday.
Right.
The question was, what part of the offense needs to get better? And he said, passing.
Yeah.
And so
Which is true.
And he explained yesterday, he's like, well, what would I say? Saquon's an MVP candidate. The run game's obviously great.
Right.
The pass game's where we need improvement, and that doesn't mean just the quarterback. That means receivers, pass protection, could be anything. So I'm a sucker for believing that context, that all he's doing was telling the truth, not trying to, stir it up and create issues.
Sure. It just feels like one of those comments where he's been around long enough to know how that's going to come across.
Dance around it better.
Yeah, and if you're going to put that out there, you should probably be putting a little bit more additional context. Either way, they're right? The pass game is the area that has been struggling relatively. So if Pittsburgh's defense can slow down that run game and force them to the air, that's where it plays into their hands, right? That's where you suddenly unleash those pass rushers. That's where the defense is best anyway.
Yeah, forgive me if I've repeated this many times on the show. I forget who said it a couple weeks ago, but I think they summed up my thoughts on watching Jalen Hurts in the offense. He's third offensive coordinator in 3 years, but the offense always feels like you're just kind of waiting for a one-on-one receiver to win, throwing an ISO route, and that was a lot of last week. Like, hey, AJ, go run a 16-yard curl on 3rd and 14 and we'll convert. And it does feel like a lot of Jalen Hurts offenses just depend on big time receivers just making plays, and it's not read it out, get through your reads, get to the open guy. It reminds me a little bit of the way I've described the Packers passing offense. I mean the Jets passing offense with Aaron Rodgers, where it's a whole bunch of like, hey, go win one-on-one. We're not going to scheme it open a ton. We're not going to I'm not saying those plays don't exist, right? We've seen wheel routes to Saquon Barkley this year. There's screens and all that. But there's also the tush-push element with the Eagles. They are it's a slower offense. It's a plodding type of offense, the way they move down the field. Anytime it's 4th and short, yeah, they're going to convert, but do you actually lose some of the playbook, not, running play action and taking shots down the field on 4th down every now and again, right? So it's just what I see with the Eagles. My point is, do they, with the receivers that they have, do they make it a little more difficult on themselves week after week? In last year, you saw games where A.J. Brown had 15 targets. You just don't have those games nearly as much. Now they're winning, they're fine, but are they going to need that at some point? In a game like this, would they need it? Not so much this week with the run game, as you said, but when they have to go up against the Lions in a shootout, can they, unlock that when they need it?
Yeah, I mean, to give you some context here, they're a bit more of a plodding offense. They are 18th in yards per play. Like, they don't, they get there. They tend to score. They're putting up a lot of points, but they do it much more incrementally than a lot of other teams do.
And I think I'm using the baseline of the 2022 Eagles, which was the first year they had A.J. Brown. They had Devontae Smith. They had all these weapons. They didn't have Saquon Barkley, and they were explosive. And the answer every week was, yeah, A.J. Brown's going to have 5 targets some weeks, but that's okay. They didn't need him because they had other guys winning, creating explosives. So, look, it might be a better, well-rounded Eagles offense on paper, but want to be able to see that every week, and I think that's what we were feeling this week in a lot of this discussion.
Wait, I'm going to correct some misinformation on the show.
From me?
No, from me.
Okay, good.
They are not, in fact, 18th. I had a filter on. They are 11th, which is slightly above average, but still some way short of the top most explosive offense.
And you would think
in the NFL.
maybe they could be higher. They have a ton of potential there.
Yeah.
So look, people know I love the way the Eagles have been built. I think they're great. I think last year's second half collapse, I know there was internal stuff and coaching stuff. I thought it was, it was crazy because they're very good and talented, and we've seen a lot of that this year. And I think this is another, for Pittsburgh, just a big test in the, I think they can make a Super Bowl run. I haven't said that about the Steelers in forever.
Yeah.
I think they can make a run. I think Russ has given them the ability to win different types of games that they couldn't win in other years.
Yeah, but then we get to this. Now, Russell Wilson faces the actual Vic Fangio defense, which, remember, was the scheme that first caused Russell Wilson to have all kinds of problems. Now, it was generally Brandon Staley's version of that defense that was really giving him fits back when Brandon Staley was running the best defense in the NFL with the Rams. But still, this was the scheme. 2 high coverage shells, take away the explosive plays, don't let him just run around the backfield and then heave a deep ball down the sideline to, Seattle receivers. This was the scheme that caused him the most problems. We speculated the last couple of weeks, right, that his arc of performance almost tracks exactly with the rise of this scheme and then its sort of demise when teams have pivoted to other schemes. Basically tracks Russell Wilson great in Seattle, not good, terrible Denver, and then back with a bit of a resurgence this year. Well, now he goes up against actual Vic Fangio. How does that look?
I would say the fact that Russ is getting Pat Freiermuth involved a lot more, that seam route that he threw last week, just an absolute dime. I think that bodes well, that maybe they might have the right answers for this. And it's not as simple as, well, I can't throw deep now because Fangio's gonna take that away. So I think Pittsburgh might have the counterpunch here. I think we're going to see some points. Should see some points in this one because you're going to get the squeaky wheel of A.J. Brown, and
I think
Pittsburgh's going to have to keep up.
I forget where I saw this, but somebody was like, Nick Sirianni is basically the most squeaky wheel, narrative-driven coach in football.
Love that we quantify that stuff.
Like, was it Jahan Dotson when they went up against Washington, right? It was like Jahan Dotson.
Like a curl to him first play.
They were like, guarantee he's going to hit more than his projected total, right? Guaranteed, because Nick Sirianni is the most squeaky wheel, narrative-driven coach in the NFL, immediately going to make sure that Dotson gets some yardage against his old team. So A.J. Brown, pass game's not great. They're going to target A.J. Brown like 7 times in the first quarter.
It's good. Check that PrizePicks projection. That might be where you want to go.
Damn, Matt, I didn't put it on my own thing now that I've talked it out.
All right, man. We gotta start going quicker through the games here. 5.5. Steelers at the Eagles. Where are you going with this one? Over-under's only 42.5, by the way.
Yeah. I'm going to go with the Steelers. I'm buying into that defense being able to slow them down.
5.5 feels like a lot. My initial reaction was 5.5's a lot. Do we have weather issues? Where are we? Oh, it's in Philly.
We got weather issues. The battle for Pennsylvania. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Philadelphia. Anybody got the weather for me? Why is it 42.5? Daily, Sunday.
Maybe they're just buying into too good
just
defense.
46. No precipitation.
Yeah, it's just too good defense.
Feels like a lot for me, so I'm going to take Pittsburgh, as will Harry, to cover the 5.5. Green Bay Packers at the Seattle Seahawks. It's Sunday Night Football in Seattle. Packers favored now by 2.5. Is that right? I'm going to trust the graphic right there. Has been 3. It's now at 2.5. First place, Seattle at 8-5 against third place, Green Bay, 9-4.
Seattle, I mean, generally rounding into form with the caveat of, they had a good game on the interior of that offensive line going up against a very weak, in terms of personnel, group in Arizona. Green Bay can definitely bring more to the table than that. I would say generally the Packers are stronger on the edge than they are on the interior, which helps Seattle. But that's the thing for Seattle. Any given week, it's like if they get reasonable play from the interior of the offensive line, I think they're in really good shape. If they don't, that could be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think rounding into form is the right way to describe Seattle right now. Geno Smith's had a very good year. I think he's taken care of the ball, especially in recent weeks. He's been just a high completion percentage, efficiency type of QB in a difficult situation, right? He's had a lot of those weeks where the right side of the offensive line has been awful in pass protection, and he's still making do. And then you have, you go back to that draft pick of Jackson Smith and Jigba, right? They had those 2 picks in the first round, Devin Witherspoon. Then they get JSN. You and I that year were ranking receivers. You had Jordan Addison 1, JSN 2. I think I had it flipped. JSN 1, Addison 2. Both of those guys, the way they've come on this year, especially JSN recently, looking really good. And you just see the value of having really good high-end receivers. As Tyler Lockett has gotten older, JSN stepping in, DK Metcalf still a deep threat. And then Seattle's defense with Mike McDonald, get some different pieces in there, have different flexibility. And the thing that stands out to me is what Green Bay, it wasn't that Jordan Love was under a ton of pressure, but like the first half he kind of was against Detroit.
He was, yeah. I mean, it shouldn't have been.
And they were blitzing and scheming it up, and I think McDonald can have similar success against a pretty good Green Bay pass blocking offensive line. They had some issues.
Right. It was an interesting week last week because a bunch of sort of weird, anomalous games happened. Like Green Bay's pass protection is good. It's not maybe elite, and maybe it's taken a step back this year in overall terms, but it's pretty good. And it was getting really wrecked by Detroit's pass rush, which is obviously absent Aiden Hutchinson and as well as a ton of other players. Like Detroit's pass rush should not have been able to do to Green Bay's offensive line what it was able to do. And yet that's exactly the dynamic. So again, I don't know what you do with that. Is it like the Rams and the Bills? Did that signal something, or was that just a bad game?
Yeah, I think that was, like you said, there were some surprising outcomes there. And then, Packers offensively, again, I think Love, like what I just described with Geno Smith, Love's been playing pretty solid the last couple of weeks. We saw that not as many big-time throws as we saw last year from Jordan Love, but he still has it in him. We saw that one play in particular where he's under pressure and like what Jordan Love is capable of. And I still have this, I'll describe the Packers the way I've described the Steelers offense. The ceiling is still there. I don't think the Packers have come close to hitting their ceiling offensively. Maybe it's because, you're relying on Josh Jacobs a little bit more, but the Packers offense has multiple ways to win with a plethora of different playmakers. Tucker Kraft having a great year. Christian Watson's ability to stretch the field. Love's ability to make big-time throws when needed, and their ability to win on the ground with Josh Jacobs with a solid offensive line. So the Packers are just solid across the board. Seattle looks like a good, solid team across the board. I think for Seattle, this is kind of their test. Can they compete with the NFC North, the best division in like football history right now? Is Seattle a legitimate, can make a playoff run? This is a test here. Primetime Sunday Night Football.
Both of these teams are, I mean, we've been saying for weeks now, it looks like Detroit and Philadelphia are on this collision course of the NFC Championship game. Both of these two teams, though, feel like they are dangerous in the playoffs, assuming they both get there. Different routes, different pathways to it potentially. But
winner of this, they get the coveted Rich Eisen.
Don't want to face them in January.
Don't want to face this team in January. The winner of this game, this is the don't want to face them in January bowl.
Yeah.
The winner is going to get that. Monday morning, you think you want to run into Seattle in the playoffs? You want to run into Green Bay? I know they're in third in the North. You want to run into Green Bay? Absolutely not.
Yeah. I mean, easily you could. I mean, Green Bay already did it last year. Essentially, hit the postseason on a hot streak and was dangerous. I think either one of these two teams is potentially extremely dangerous in the postseason.
Yeah, completely agree. Anything else to add?
No, we ain't got time for that. Let's go.
We do. We have to
16 games.
We got to be quick and efficient. All right. So Packers by 2.5, 46.5 is the over/under. Where are you going to go with this one?
I'm going with Seattle at home. I think they'll have enough to cover that.
Home dogs, man. I'm going to take Seattle. Harry's going to go with Green Bay here. We're making our picks right now. You can make some picks with us over at Circa, Week 18. I might need to throw it to you to tell everybody about what we're doing at Circa in a second here. But we're going to be there for the finale, Stadium Swim, Legacy Club, best views in Vegas. Come join us.
Yeah, I mean, amazing venue, Circa, if you haven't been there. Incredible resort and some of the best places to watch an NFL game or a slate of NFL games that I can possibly imagine. So I'm really looking forward to experiencing an NFL weekend from there. We're going to be there all weekend effectively. I think Friday night, is that right, is when we are talking about having the kind of meetup. So look, if you're within distance of Las Vegas or simply want to come out for the weekend, come join us. That Sportsbook looks like an absolutely amazing place to experience an NFL weekend from. The resort casino itself is a phenomenal place. Can't recommend it highly enough, and excited to meet people if you want to come out.
So come join us. The link is in the description of the YouTube right here. So circlelasvegas.com/huddle-up and overhang. Check out the link in the description, and then choose the Los Angeles weekend in the date drop-down box, and come join us. Check the mic at Circa Week 18. That's the first weekend of January. Let's go Tampa Bay Bucks at the Los Angeles Chargers. This is another Sunday 4:25 game, loaded up. Sunday 4 o'clock window here. Chargers favored by 3. They're 8-5. Taking on the first place 7-6 Bucks.
Yeah, the Chargers. They've got one of the best pass defenses in the NFL. Consistently extremely good. What do they do against Baker Mayfield, and can they force streaky Baker Mayfield into just the bad streaks? Are we going to get a ton of Baker head-scratching, turnover-worthy type plays against a really good pass defense?
Yeah, and, as we said, this kind of shows up sometimes within a game. It's not streaky over a 4-week stretch. It's like within a game. In particular, last week, some of the issues were right before the half. There's been a few of those just before the half issues with Baker in the box. So I think they're going to have to play cleaner. Meanwhile, on the other side, Justin Herbert has 1 interception all season. He's on pace for record-setting low interception totals. And he does have 11 turnover-worthy plays. A lot of those are fumbles in the pocket, that he had earlier in the year. He's also stacked up a couple more injuries. Sounds like he's got 2 injuries on the report here, which is way below the week that he had 4.
Yeah.
Going into the Chiefs game back in week 4.
He got banged up last week. Yeah. Even during the game, obviously, he got what looked like the Charlie horse. Took a helmet or whatever to the thigh.
I think all QBs are tough. We've seen Mahomes play through injuries. We've seen Trevor Lawrence play through multiple injuries at a time. But Herbert, this seems like every year. And I know everybody gets hurt every single year, but Herbert seems like he's got a tick more. Him and Lawrence seem to have a tick more than others that they seem to play through. Didn't seem to affect Herbert's performance in the second half last week, so I don't know if there'll be.
He's got some pretty extensive experience of playing through it.
He does, but 14 touchdowns, 1 pick on the entire season right now. That is the Jim Harbaugh dream here.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's looking. He's become the kind of perfect Jim Harbaugh quarterback. Like, they're not putting the ball in his hands as much as it's been in the past. They are relying on the fact that he doesn't turn the ball over, is extremely careful with the football as a general trait in his NFL career, and he is capable of spectacular plays.
You know what else I like in there? A career high now, average depth of target of 9.3.
Yeah.
We kind of asked for this. Now, it's a lower volume passing attack.
Right.
But we asked for this for years. Like, what if you let Herbert be the flip the field guy? Would he still take care of the ball and create big play opportunities? I think the answer is yes. The question is now, do they have the receivers to kind of make that work?
And that's the thing. Without Ladd McConkey, the rookie last week, we saw just how kind of bereft of talent this receiving core is. And that was with Quentin Johnston making a couple of plays, probably having the best game of his career in totality. Maybe it wasn't the best productive or the most production he's ever had. But when you sort of stack up the positive contributions he made in that game, I think you can fairly argue that was the best game of his career. Even with that, it's like this offense just doesn't have enough absent Ladd McConkey, particularly when their running backs are banged up and J.K. Dobbins is done. They are missing weapons.
So I think you mentioned the pass game too for the Bucs going up against this Chargers defense. Chargers done a pretty good job against the run as well. The Bucs rushing offense, whether it's with Bucky Irving, Rachaad White ran extremely well last week. Sean Tucker's gotten his this year when he's had opportunities. The Bucs have run the ball extremely well. Chargers have been stingy up front compared to where they've been in previous years. This is the Bucs offense, fifth best points per game. I think the Chargers still number one, right, in points allowed. So should be a great matchup. I love this one.
Yeah,
love this game.
It should be a fun game. It's a strange one where I think Tampa Bay's defense, because the Chargers are lacking weapons and kind of banged up on offense, I think their defense can do a decent job, and then it really does come down to whether Baker can play a clean brand of football or if he's going to be forced into a bunch of mistakes by the Chargers defense.
The last thing here, so the Bucs are game up on the Falcons in the South. They don't have the tiebreaker. After this game, the Bucs, this is the most difficult game they have by far out of their last four. They're at the Chargers this week. They're at Dallas next week. And then Panthers. Now, that might be the most difficult game, to be honest. And then the Saints. So Bucs have 3 very winnable games after this one, and they're in control in this division. Now, the Falcons get the Raiders this week. After that, similar, not a difficult schedule, Giants, but they have the playoff Commanders, and then the Panthers. So I think both teams are essentially playing one playoff caliber team. It's the Bucs this week, and it's the Falcons in a few weeks.
Yeah, Tampa.
Looking at the race here,
the Bucs kind of put themselves in a hole with that losing stretch in the middle of the season. But since that, they've won the games that they were supposed to win: Giants, Panthers, Raiders, and now we're back to facing a difficult team for the first time in a while.
All right, man. You ready to pick them here?
Yeah.
Chargers by 3, over under 45.5. Where are you going?
Going with the Chargers. I feel like that defense might create some bad Baker.
Man, I think I'm going to agree. All right, I'll take the Chargers as well. Bouncing back from their disappointing. Do we have any post-Kansas City results, like the post-Detroit? Like every single week where the team has the heartbreaking loss against Kansas City, how do they do?
Post-bummer.
Yeah. Post-doink for the division. I'll take the Chargers. Harry will also take the Chargers to cover the 3 here. Sunday at 4:25. Another 4:25 game. Oh, they're all great. All the games. Indianapolis Colts at the Denver Broncos. Broncos 8-5. Colts are 6-7. If the Colts are going to make any kind of run, they are the next closest team to the Broncos for that number 7 seed here. Would obviously need to win this game.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, this has been sort of billed for a while as, the wild card, the number 7 seed matchup between the two teams that we expect to be the last team. But all of a sudden, like, Denver is tied with the Ravens and the Chargers. Like,
True.
All the wild cards have now condensed. It's no longer just the 7th seed that's up for grabs. Suddenly the Ravens and the Chargers have slipped into
it's
the
5,
wild
6,
card
7.
picture. It's like,
Yeah, they're all available.
like,
there.
if you're the Colts and you're a couple of games back and you're trying to eye this wild card spot, like, yes, obviously beating Denver is one of your, it's the best way of closing a gap. But all of a sudden the Chargers and the Ravens are within sight as well.
I mean, they would be a game behind Houston. I mean, so that similar. The Dolphins are 6-7. They're
right.
playing Houston, so it's a lot of teams that would be on the in the hunt.
I mean, there's a lot of ways in
teams
for
here.
Indianapolis, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So it's a huge game, man. And you go back to they're coming off a bye. Last time we saw them, they had the game-winning 2-point conversion against New England, and seems like maybe it was a throwaway game at the time, but that one play, that last drive from Anthony Richardson, 17 plays or whatever it was, like that's looms large if they can, pull this one off against Denver.
And it's their toughest game remaining as well. Like after that, they have 3 winnable games that, they could easily win out and be 10-7. If you look at NFL.com's, they've got the kind of playoff picture, but they also have playoff odds.
Let's see the playoff
this week,
here,
depending on wins and losses. So according to NFL.com, if the Colts win this game, their odds of making the postseason jumps up to 56%.
Oh, wow.
It's a huge game for them.
That's massive. This one of the biggest, highest leverage games of the weekend. Broncos by 3.5 here, by the way, is the spread. Bo Nix playing really good football for Denver. We know what their defense has done, but we saw them on Monday Night Football a couple weeks ago against Cleveland. Not looking great. A lot of open throws.
Yeah.
Cracked down when they needed to. Got those turnovers, of course, but that was probably the worst, I'd say, down-to-down performance that the Broncos defense had all season. Probably that game and the Ravens game. So we'll see if they bounce back from that.
Yeah, it's definitely that was a rough game for them. Denver generally, though, what we're focusing on, I think, should be the run defense for them because you're going up against the Colts. Anthony Richardson, definitely capable of big pass plays, but they want to build that offense off the run game. Denver is one of the better run defenses in the NFL this season, at which point you're now asking, can Anthony Richardson get it done with his arm? And that has been an inconsistent thing at best this season.
Yeah, Richardson, always a fascinating story, especially, the difference between him and Bo Nix, right? You've got the complete inexperience of Anthony Richardson and the theoretical high ceiling. Bo Nix, I should have looked this up for this game. Bo Nix must have like 3 times as many starts as Anthony Richardson.
Since high school.
Between college and NFL, right?
Yeah.
Maybe 4 times as many. All the experience of Bo Nix, not so much the theoretical upside, whether we care about that or not, but Nix playing pretty well. And look, Richardson since the benching played pretty well. And on that final drive against New England a couple weeks ago, showing what he's capable of. He can throw the ball, can be a designed runner, and the design run game is what helps. When you can't just line up and run the ball against a good run defense, you win the numbers game. That's where Richardson, but that's what he brings to the table.
Yeah, Bo Nix has 7 more career touchdown passes than Anthony Richardson in the NFL, let alone college as well with his 60 starts. Like he's a more impressive and more dynamic passer at this point.
Who is?
Bo Nix.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Just making sure I heard
like
that.
He's more experienced, more productive,
Yeah,
more dynamic, more complete as a passer. The only thing Richardson brings to the table over him is the thing he always brings to the table, like absurd, unprecedented athleticism and the greatest pass in the NFL this season.
That they lean into, right? High big-time throw percentage, low completion percentage, just the volatile style.
You have to. That's what he's bringing to the table. He is capable of spectacular plays, and he's not consistent enough at the moment, so you need to – those need to be the things you're leaning on.
Nick Bonito, we've highlighted him a bunch on the show here. One of the best edge rushers, top 5 or 6 since week 7. Bernard Ryman should be – he was back last time around. Pretty good matchup on the left side there. Bonito, I think he's got a sack in 7 or 8 straight games, but he not only is doing a better job of winning up front, but also finishing plays. Richardson, generally tough to sack. One of the things that he is decent at. So we'll see if Denver can get home. I think they'll have a chance to get some pressure, even though the Colts offensive line has been solid overall.
Ryman being back is important for them. The other side of the offensive line, I think, is a potential weakness. The right tackle spot, that would be the space that you could potentially attack for pressure. Nick Bonito tends to be on the other side of the line, right? The left tackle side.
Yes.
So unless they're going to specifically move him over there to attack that spot, the Colts might catch a break just by their best player going up against their good side of the line.
All right, man. Massive game. High leverage game here.
High leverage.
Where are you going with this one?
Denver. Going with the Broncos.
Oh, by 3.5. I'll take Indy again. I'm taking all the underdogs this week to keep it close. Harry's going to take Denver to cover this. I just think they'll keep it close. Another awesome game. Miami Dolphins at the Houston Texans. This one's at 1. Texans by 2.5 here, over under 46.5. But the 6-7 Dolphins taking on the 8-5 Texans. Now let's see if the Dolphins can beat a good team, or at least a winning record.
Well, that's the thing. So has there been an 8-5 team with as much bad vibes as the Houston Texans in a long time?
Is that relative to expectations or just how they've how they've done it this year.
It's kind of felt like that all the way through the year. Like early in the season, at least for the first half of the year, every time I looked up at their record, I'm like, wow, their record's way better than I keep expecting it to be. They only had those 2 losses, right, to Minnesota, who were the kryptonite for that type of offense, and Green Bay, who are in the toughest division and are a really good team as well, right? So you keep looking up and they're winning. They look really good record-wise. It's just that it doesn't feel great. And then, in the second half of the season so far, they've lost a lot. They've lost more games, and 2 of them have come against teams that they should be beating, the Jets, the Titans. So all of a sudden now you're looking at, the last sort of half dozen games and you think, okay, now it's a little less good overall, right? They're beating some teams or losing to some teams, including teams that they shouldn't be losing to. Now the results are matching the vibes from early in the season, which is this might be going well, but it doesn't feel good. So all of a sudden there's pressure coming from everywhere. There's Bobby Slowick's under pressure. Why isn't the offense firing? Why isn't C.J. Stroud playing as well as last year? Why can't the offensive line protect anything? It's just not – it doesn't feel good for the Texans.
Last time we saw them, they're coming off their bye, but last time we saw them in Jacksonville, they were up early, and Mac Jones brought the Jags back.
Really struggled
a bit of a scare
against the Jacksonville team, whose defense gives up a ton and whose offense is led by Mac Jones.
Yeah. So the last team with a winning record that they played was Detroit, and they, depends on your perspective here, they picked off Goff 4 real times plus the Hail Mary and lost by 3.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, you only lost by 3 to the Lions, but you also, were handed a couple possessions and didn't do much with it.
Right.
So saw them lose to the Titans just a few weeks ago. So, yeah, we'll see what happens coming out of the bye. Houston's pass protection's been a little bit better in recent weeks. And then if you looked at C.J. Stroud's year 2, like if this was his rookie season, what would you say about C.J. Stroud? Pretty good. It's all right.
Yeah.
It's not great. I mean,
Right.
He looked like a future star in year 1. He's regressed while everything around him has regressed a bit.
Yeah, you certainly wouldn't be blown away by what you're seeing from C.J. Stroud this year if this was his rookie season. It's only that we know he's capable of so much more. But this is, I mean, this year's version of C.J. Stroud is a lot more in line with the baseline Ohio State level of C.J. Stroud, whereas last year's version was a lot more in line basically with the Georgia game, right?
Yeah.
And this was the analysis coming into the draft. It's like, on the one hand, you've got this giant body of work of him as a starter. And on the other hand, you've got one game against the best competition he faced at the highest level, which showed he has a ceiling that's higher than that. Which one do you place more stock in? And last year, it seemed like the answer should have been the one game. As counterintuitive as that seems, apparently that one game against the best opposition he faced was more predictive or more indicative of what you're going to get from C.J. Stroud than all of the rest of his tape. And this year, you're like, well, maybe not. Maybe actually he's going to settle back towards the other level. Now, to be fair, and in his defense, the offensive line has been significantly worse this year than it was last season. I mean, Brandon Thorne on yesterday's show.
Nico Collins in and out of the lineup, too.
Brandon Thorne on last, and, Stephon Diggs being down.
Right.
Joe Mixon has missed time. Like, they've missed a lot of players. But Brandon Thorne on yesterday's show kind of singled out the Texans' offensive line as one of the struggling units in the NFL. PFF's pass blocking efficiency has them down in 24th place, with a disproportionately high number of sacks relative to the total pressures they're giving up. I think it is fair to say this is a pretty bad offensive line, and he's not reacting well to that.
Yeah. So I think matchup-wise, to help Stroud, Nico Collins has been outstanding. We get to see a little Nico Collins, Jalen Ramsey. And then on the other side, I can't get it out of my head. I really want to like Houston. And I still think if we talk about the season a lot in 4-game stretches. Like if this becomes a good 4-game stretch for Houston, they become, they got Kansas City in the next few weeks. Like they've got some challenging games, but if they can play their best football, they're capable of knocking off good teams. They got to take care of business against Miami. But I can't get out of my head how many deep passing opportunities they've allowed, even including Derek Stingley, right? Who I think ball skills have been incredible, and then other times there's just dudes running past him. And so you've got Tyreek Hill, you've got Jalen Waddle. I think that's a really interesting matchup to me because Stingley, You have Stingley on one side, who's like freak, all-around athlete, number 3 overall pick in the draft. And you have Kamari Lassiter, who goes in the second round because reportedly ran in the 4.6s at his pro day, but is a very good player. Like, he's a very good corner. And so he's going up against, one of the fastest teams, if not the fastest team in the NFL. Does that, everything we talk about in March about pro days, does that come back to bite in this game, or is he okay? So that whole matchup, I think, on the outside with the Dolphins, the way Tua's been playing, very efficient football, it's going to be a good one. And Miami gets to answer this question: can you beat? I still put them in the bucket of good team, Houston. Can you beat good teams?
Right.
Can you win road games? Can you win these clutch games when your season's essentially on the line if you're Miami?
Well, what's interesting to me is that, so these are two Shanahan derivative offenses, obviously, with Mike McDaniel and Bobby Slowick. This year, the Shanahan offenses, just as we were ready to declare, they have the answer to hiding offensive lines. They are able to paper over bad offensive lines regardless of the situation. You hit this year, all of a sudden that stops being true for all of them. But Miami with Tua is the one of the three, let's say, Kyle Shanahan, Slowick, and McDaniel. Because they have Tua, that's the one of those three that's able to hide that the best, because Tua will get the ball out faster than any other quarterback in the NFL, right, as a general rule. So I think Miami's offensive line looked really rough earlier in the season when Tua wasn't there. Tua comes back, the ball's coming out in 2.1 seconds, and suddenly Jets beat reporters are like, well, the Jets barely touched him. What was with the Jets pass rush? Because the ball's coming out lightning fast.
Tua did it.
Yeah. So in this world where Houston's offensive line is definitely struggling, it looks like one of the worst in the league, Miami's offensive line, I think, would be struggling as well, except Tua is able to make up the difference there. So Houston's defense is capable of really, really high-level play, forced a ton of turnovers against Detroit. It's just generally a good and destructive defense. But Tua might be the quarterback that can hide that or mitigate it or offset it. Meanwhile, on the other side of the ball, Miami's defense is pretty destructive in its own right, and I don't think C.J. Stroud or the offense is able to do as good a job of hiding that.
The thing I'm always interested in these matchups, and it's not going to be great, I'm not going to bring great analysis to the table because I'm more asking a question.
Perfect.
How does familiarity work, right? Like when you're Bobby or you're McDaniel, you know each other's terminology, you know each other's tendencies, right? It's the same scheme. You've diverged a little bit and done your own stuff, but you know how the system works, right? You know if you see X, we're gonna do Y. So now, and DeMeco Ryans has that familiarity with Mike McDaniel, right? So you, as the defense, can give the offense the look that you want to get them to do a certain thing, right? And how much can you lean into that? And then how much does the offense have answers to what you know that the defense can make you do, right? So the familiarity aspect, I think, is a great, fun storyline that I don't know how it ends up playing out within, 60, 70 plays, but you essentially know what the other team wants to do, and when you give them certain answers, how they're going to, counterpunch, essentially.
I mean, it is a fascinating dynamic where almost everybody in this game at some point worked with each other.
Yeah.
They're all from the same system.
And that's tonight's game, too, when we get to Rams-Niners and the annual Shanahan-McVay matchups and everything. So, all right, man. Houston by 2.5 here, Sunday at 1. Where are you going?
Going with Miami. I think both defenses will do some damage, but I think the Miami's offense is able to hide that better.
I'm going to overrate the bye week. Houston solved all their problems. They're going to come back looking like a Super Bowl contender down the stretch here.
Great.
Uh-oh. Is this chair broken? This might be it.
It would seem likely. Usually is.
Is it broken all the way?
I don't know.
It's not broken like...
I already had to swap mine out for a different one.
It's just the side handle. It's done. That's not ready for 300 pounds.
According to the NFL, if Miami wins this game, their chances jump up to 32% from almost dead and buried.
And intern Anthony has the note in here, which surprised me. So Houston clinches the AFC South with a win and an Indy loss, with tiebreakers and everything, right? So we're already at that point in the season. We got a lot of
that makes sense.
Playoff scenarios.
A couple of games ahead and running out of games.
Chicago Bears at the Minnesota Vikings. Did I say Harry's taking Houston, by the way? Chicago Bears at the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings by 7. They're 11-2. Bears are 4-9. Just played a couple weeks ago here.
Yeah.
In overtime.
Right. So it's tough to know what to make of that game because it was one of those games that Chicago's had a few of this year where they get annihilated in the first half. And you're like, oh, this is going to be a complete beatdown. The Vikings were stomping them, and then Chicago executed the comeback, got it all the way back to overtime, and then lost the game anyway. It's like, and the line, like Vegas is convinced that actually the Vikings are way better than the Bears, and the first half is more indicative of what this dynamic is. But they did take it to overtime last time. It's a strange, I don't know what to do with those games, like Chicago versus Minnesota, Chicago versus Detroit, Green Bay even. Like these games where they've actually kept it close, even though for a period it looked like they were getting blown out.
I mean, they're also division games too, so sometimes those end up closer than the records would indicate. I mean, the bigger issue for me is trying to figure out these ebbs and flows of Caleb Williams and the offense's season.
Right, but usually those division games that are closer, they are actually closer. This one, for at least the first half, wasn't. I mean, they were getting destroyed, and then it became close somehow in the second half.
So what do you do with Caleb Williams' season here, where it's 3 bad games, 3 good games, 3 bad games, coach gets fired, 2 good games, ish.
It's a roller coaster.
And then probably 2 bad. I mean, I don't know how you put the Detroit game was like a bad half and a good half. You know, I mean, what do you even do? Because last week's game against San Francisco, we broke it down the other day. The stats were fine. The non-sack stats, 17 of 23, 2 touchdowns, passer rating of 116. But sacked 7 times, and sacked on. And here's the more mind-blowing number. Our friend Josh Norris pointed it out more and more. He was sacked 7 times and pressured 9 times.
Yeah.
So the pressure to sack rate percentage, 7 out of 9. So 78% of the times he was pressured, it turned into a sack.
Which is a trend.
The league averages are like 15%, 18% of that.
But even
this
year,
78%, and this year he's over 31%.
He's the highest quarterback in the NFL in terms of pressure sack rate.
That's a quarterback-driven stat. Right. Is when you're pressured, what happens? And that's why I asked the question to Brandon Thorne yesterday, and I struggle with, like, what is the Bears' offensive line? Because if you look at sack totals, you would say, yeah, they're bad. The quarterback gets sacked a lot, but we know a lot of that's on the QB. So I think that was the discouraging part if you're a Bears fan and you're looking at Caleb Williams, and we all want this linear development, right? Keep getting better every single week. You almost we fired the coach. We had a couple good game against Green Bay, good game against Minnesota. Unbelievable throw to put the Bears in position against Minnesota to get to overtime and set up the overtime game where they lost. Fine. And then last week looked like the same games that coach got fired for.
Right.
Shane Waldron got fired for. So that was discouraging, I would say.
And to put that stat in some context, I mean, that is 3 times higher than the best numbers in the NFL. Like Josh Allen is at 9%, Jordan Love is at 9%. And that's not necessarily a escapability style thing. Even quarterbacks that hold onto the ball a long time. Lamar Jackson's at 12%, Anthony Richardson's at 12%, Bo Nix is at 13%. So it's 3 times higher than like the best quarterbacks in the NFL. It's more than double the average level. It's a catastrophic number. I mean, that's abysmal. And now you're going up again against this Brian Flores defense that forces mistakes, that forces indecision, hesitation. He had a pretty good game against them the last time in totality, but he did have 3 turnover-worthy plays, which ties for the highest he's had in a single game this season.
That was the game where he had, the 5 big-time throws where he just looked special.
Right.
Like the special plays came out, the bad plays came out, sure, but it was like, all right, we're at least seeing him playing free and easy, and that disappeared the last game and a half.
But it was a game, I mean, even if Caleb is able to play at his extremely high level and have 5 big-time throws and, be looking special, getting away without an interception with 3 turnover-worthy plays is, I think, an interesting data point there when you're repeating that matchup.
Yeah, for sure. So I think something to keep an eye on there. I'm having a tough time predicting what you're going to get from Caleb Williams every single week. Last week looked rough. And then Minnesota, we have talked about Sam Darnold, MVP candidate, the way he's playing. But for me, it's really the totality of this Minnesota offense. As much as we've talked about Flores' defense this year, Minnesota's offense rounding into, as well-rounded an offense in the NFL. They attack down the field. They have a tight end that is dependable in Hawkinson. Run the ball a little bit with Aaron Jones. They've been outstanding in the red zone, especially schematically. and that pairs well with the way the defense is played.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, the Vikings, we keep talking about this NFC Championship matchup, right? Detroit, Philadelphia, the collision course they're on. I mean, the Vikings keep winning. It may not look as dominant or as convincing necessarily overall as, say, Detroit, but
it's more convincing than 2 years ago, the 2022
right.
team.
I mean, where they felt sort of fraudulent, or at least, I mean, that's the game. That's the year where they end up getting upset in the playoffs by the Giants. It's like, see,
came good,
right? 11, whatever it was, 11 one-score games.
We had to be right about one of those fraudulent teams, though.
Yeah,
they both proved us right.
It is different to that, and they are more well-rounded. Like Detroit's offense is phenomenal, but their defense is now a mash unit with 13 guys on IR. The Vikings' defense is pretty good. So you've got good defense, good offense, but they don't seem to have these like complete start-to-finish games where they're playing at a really high level. They do it in the first half, or they do it in the second half, and it's not quite been strung together as a complete dominant performance. But they are winning. You know, there's 6 straight wins. They're 11-2. They're only a game back from Detroit. Like, they are kind of looming as this threat that nobody's talking about necessarily in the NFC.
And then if you look at their schedule too, Minnesota, this is their easiest game, and it's a division game. So they play the Bears this week.
Right.
And then if you want to put to the test how dangerous are they in the playoff, well, at Seattle, against Green Bay, and then at Detroit the last 3 weeks. So the NFC West leader, the Packers, who are a game behind them in the North, and then the Lions, who are a game ahead of them in the North. So we'll see. We'll learn plenty about Minnesota, but I think I feel better about them now. Maybe, you know, they've won 6 straight. I get it. I think the Rams game, they just lost those 2 straight games. They lost to the Rams because they played the Lions the week before. The Lions basically beat them twice in a row, right? Because the Lions hangover on that Thursday night game.
And
that's it.
That Rams
for
game,
Minnesota.
That Rams game is the only one this season where they've been sort of conclusively outplayed. I mean, the Lions game
just
was really
straight outplayed.
Yeah, the Lions game was really close, and it was a very interesting back and forth schematic battle. Like that was a tight arm wrestle. The Rams game was the one this season where they just have been second best, clearly.
Yeah. So look, I think I'm just more of a believer in Minnesota now, I think, than I was earlier in the year, because it's all rounding into form. They're going to give up a lot of yards, yes, but they can create turnovers, create indecision. They can make you one-dimensional. They can do a lot on defense, and then it can win every single way on offense now, the way Darnold's playing. So if he keeps it up, they're right in the mix. Can they cover the 7?
Yeah, I think they can. The other dynamic at play is Chicago's defense that, remember, last year it felt like they overachieved relative to talent level. This season they picked up the way they left off last season. It's like, maybe this is a really well-coached unit that's able to, outperform everything. The defense kind of fallen off in recent weeks. I remember for all the crap Eberflus was taking about, in-game decisions, time management, offense struggling, he was a defensive-minded coach, and the defense was the unit that was overperforming consistently. Maybe getting rid of that guy has caused some problems on that side of the ball.
Yeah, they have not been as good. Lost some players up front. Gervin Dexter's been
and that's
injured.
A huge part as well. Yeah, injuries have hit. But, it's possibly worth thinking about. You did get rid of the guy who's the defensive mind, and suddenly – not suddenly, but the defense now is worse than it used to be.
By the way, if you were unaware – there's another Monday night doubleheader this week. This is game 1 of the Monday night doubleheader. Yeah, the NFL has played with this a lot this year. Which
are these dueling kickoffs, or are we getting the hour stagger?
This is 8 and 8:30. We're back to the 8 and 8:30. Ugh. They've experimented with 7:30 and 8:15. This is 8 and 8:30 kickoffs. I don't mind it. I like the double screen. I think you could pay attention. It saves us from having to watch 9 games in the 1 o'clock window. So I like that.
Sure.
So anyway, Vikings by 7, Monday Night Football, game 1.
I'm going with Minnesota to cover that. I hate it, but I do feel like Caleb doesn't play as well as last time. I feel like even if he does, the mistakes he makes will count when they didn't last time. And I just think the Bears aren't as good as they were then. So
I'm taking another underdog, man. Bears to keep it within 7. They'll keep it close enough. Harry's going to take Minnesota on this one. Speaking of Harry,
Speaking of Harry.
Different Harry. Sometimes you just need a no-brainer gift that no one will want to swap out, like a solid shaving set. That's from our friends over at Harry's. Right now you can get 50% off Harry's holiday craft set with a custom green gift box and a free handle engraving. Perfect for that one guy that's impossible to shop for, especially if that guy is you. Sam and I received our Harry's sets last month. It's a great shave. It's a great look. It's a great feel. Love everything about it, and we think you will too. So check out the Harry's Holiday Craft Set. It's a great gift. Includes the one craft handle, your choice of foaming shave gel or the shave cream. I like the shave gel. I really appreciate what that feels like on my face. That would be my choice there. 2 extra blades. You get a travel blade cover. There's no gift wrapping required. The set comes in a rich, sleek green gift box that will stand out. You personalize it with available engraving options, and it's a risk-free purchase. Harry's offers a 100% money-back guarantee, and you order by, today, December 12th.
Ooh.
Today is your last day to make sure you get it by Christmas, the holiday craft set. You do it today by December 12th. So you get 50% off Harry's holiday craft set, a custom green gift box, and free handle engraving when you go to harrys.com/checkthemic. That's harrys.com/checkthemic for 50% off Harry's holiday craft set. All right, how many games we got left?
1 million.
Dallas Cowboys at the Carolina Panthers. Panthers favored what? Panthers favored by 2.5. First time since December 2022 that the Panthers have been favored.
Were you indicating shock at the fact that they're favored, or was that a Kirk Cousins voice cracking deal?
No, that was me acting fake shocked.
Got it.
Even though I already knew that they were favored, I was acting surprised that they were favored because it was the first time since December 2022.
Indeed.
Now you've completely exposed the business here.
Yeah. Well, I was unsure. Because you're fighting through the illness. I wasn't sure.
I am waiting for a Kirk Cousins, like, welcome in.
Exactly.
I was waiting for something.
I wasn't sure if your voice had just gone.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Panthers favored. Discuss.
For the first time in 2 years against the Dallas Cowboys. The
young rush won.
The consecutive 12-12-12 win Dallas Cowboys, who now stink, apparently, to the degree that the Panthers are favored.
Yeah. I mean, the Panthers are a better competitive team. They're a whole different team, right? Are they the best 3-10 team in history? I don't know. They might be.
Probably not.
Probably not. But they're playing like a much better team than 3-10.
Indeed. I mean, look, we've said it every week. Like Bryce Young's fun to watch because he's playing more like Alabama Bryce Young. He's been doing it sequentially against better teams. He did it last week against the Philadelphia Eagles and Vic Fangio's defense, arguably the best defense in the NFL, depending on how you want to measure such things. Now, he did have a couple of turnover-worthy plays in that game. There were a couple of bad mistakes, which really, like the first bad mistakes he's made for a while. So you're sort of back to, I mean, he played well, but those were encouraging strides. Like now you're going up against the Dallas defense, which with Micah Parsons back it's a different unit that it used to be. They're getting, some guys in the secondary back as well. So this is closer to what we expected from Dallas's defense, particularly against the pass with, one of the best pass rushers in all of football and some ball hawks on the back end. That's an interesting contest. Like, can Bryce Young keep out of the grasp of Micah Parsons, and can he avoid putting the ball in harm's way?
Parsons has been outstanding, and I think you still see, like, there was some, Parsons was left completely unblocked on one play the other night. You're starting to finally see the Cowboys, and I know they disappointed Skip Bayless, and he thought they were going to win out.
They did. They made him sad.
But you're starting to finally see some of the Zimmer, for third down confusion and what they're able to create. I think there's a little bit of that, and so I think if you're still trying to evaluate Bryce Young, as we all are, that's a bit of a challenge going up against. It's still a Zimmer defense that will create some confusion up front and has a dude who can win one-on-one. Parsons is not just going up against the right tackle, but that matchup with Taylor Mouton's good. Robert Hunt on the interior. It's been a solid pass-protecting offensive line in Carolina, but Parsons can wreck any line, so that's going to be something to keep an eye on.
And the other thing, I do think that Bryce Young against those ball hawks in the secondary will be interesting to watch as well. If you notice one trend from both Alabama Bryce Young and now the current version that we're seeing, who's getting back to that, Bryce Young will put a lot of air under the ball when he's sort of ad-libbing and finding a play, right? Where it's sort of, he's got out of the pocket. Now he's identified the guy. He will put a lot of loft under that ball and try and, put it out there and let a guy go make a play. The more air you're putting into the ball, the more time you are giving, legitimate receiving caliber defensive backs like Deron Bland, like Trayvon Diggs to go get it, right? Like those guys are probably going to have a couple of opportunities in this game to make Bryce Young. And that's what he did with one of those turnovers last week. Like they're going to have they're going to have the chances to make him look kind of stupid on a couple of plays, I think.
Every single week I highlight the run game against Dallas as well. Chances to make, move the ball there with Chuba Hubbard. Unfortunate, once again, just to repeat what happened last week. Jonathan Brooks, torn ACL again. Same injury that he had last week. Same leg, right?
Same ACL.
So second game back for Brooks. Unfortunate that he did tear his ACL because he was RB1 for a lot of people, especially if he had been healthy. He was RB1 even with the injury, and obviously that was not going to see him until middle of next year at best at this point. So, but they can still move the ball with Chuba Hubbard on the ground, and I think Dallas, still their weakness up front, and one of the things they're going to have to attack this offseason is their defensive line, defensive tackle situation, linebacker, anybody in a run-stopping situation.
Again.
And they're missing DeMarvion Overshown, their guy that's been undersized, athletic, playmaking linebacker with his knee injury that we discussed yesterday as well.
Yeah, all of the knee ligaments effectively in his knee, which is, two really horrible situations injury-wise. Overshown and Jonathan Brooks of the Panthers, one each for these teams. That's a sad reality of the NFL, unfortunately.
Wasn't trying to cut you off, but another fun game to evaluate Bryce. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah,
and I'll say at this time of the year when you're 3-10 or you're 5-8 Dallas, it's who's part of the rebuild every year.
Who's part of the rebuild?
Who is part of the rebuild? Who can you believe in? Who can you trust in to be a part of the team next year when you're trying to make a playoff push? That's what these teams are trying to evaluate at this point. Mm-hmm. Who are you going with this one? Carolina by 2.5, first-time favorite since December of 22.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to go with Carolina, but I hate them being favored in any game.
I know. I think they're a different team. Honestly, I think Dallas is at least playing better in recent weeks. Cooper Rush isn't an absolute disaster at quarterback either. It's like, run the offense, hit open receivers, make some mistakes. He's a fine backup.
Right.
I like the way Bryce is playing, though. I think he can move the ball. I'll take Carolina. Harry's going to take Carolina. So you're going to take it, but you don't love it?
Yes.
All right. Baltimore Ravens at the New York Giants, Sunday at 1. Biggest spread of the year to this point. Ravens by 16.5 on the road.
This is up to 16.5?
Yeah, with an over-under of 42.5.
Damn.
So Vegas is like 30-6 is what we're expecting. You know what I mean? Is what they're expecting here. 33-13 Ravens.
And the Ravens haven't even been that good recently. Like, this is basically just an indication that the Giants are terrible.
Well, think about our Giants talking points. Dexter Lawrence injured, all of their good players are getting banged up.
Well, their one really good veteran player is out, and that leaves them with the rookie class that's good, but it's the rookie class are their best players now.
Honestly, I think Drew Lock is underwhelmed a little bit too. Drew Lock's supposed to be a bit of a gunslinger and give you some opportunities to create plays down the field, and the offense has really struggled with him, both against Dallas on Thanksgiving and then last week. Signs of life late against the Saints, but just not enough.
Yeah, I mean, I did kind of suggest that wasn't likely to be the case with Drew Lock when he got given that starting gig. When they passed over Cutlets for Drew Lock, it's like,
that's when it all went downhill.
Do we really remember Drew Lock? Like, he's not. I loved Drew Lock as a prospect, right? 6'4", 230 pounds, mobile. Like, we've seen that. This is the one thing we've seen from him in the last few weeks. He can take off, make plays with his legs, and scramble.
Yeah, he's been good with that.
Cannon for an arm. I mean, he's got all the tools. Like, in this world of just give me the toolsy quarterback and I can turn him into something special. Like, he's got all of the tools, and he came out of a high-volume passing offense in college. Like, I loved him as a prospect, and the second round is exactly where I want to take a guy like that, as opposed to forcing that guy into the first round because he's got the tools and you have to take the quarterback early. I loved the process of selecting Drew Lock at that point. It's just the NFL has not suggested that he's ever going to be good. And in fact, it suggested quite often that he's probably going to be quite bad. So I don't really understand the expectations that Drew Lock was going to be a better bet than Cutlets. And my expectations for Cutlets weren't high either. So it's like, I mean, look, Daniel Jones has not been good, but he's by far the best quarterback you have on this roster. And I think people ran away from that because Daniel Jones had been playing badly.
I think on the other side, you talk about Baltimore's defense. I think they've been a little better against the pass the last couple of weeks. I might be overrating that. It just feels like they're having a lot of issues early in the year, especially against good offenses. Struggled against the Bengals, Washington. They had some issues, but I feel like they've been a little more competitive these last couple of weeks against the Chargers, against the Eagles. Still struggled against Pittsburgh when they needed to make plays.
These are, of course.
I'm sorry, good against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, these are, of course, offenses that themselves are not exactly high-octane passing attacks.
Yeah, I get it. I understand.
Like the last good passing.
Bottom line, it's not the same Ravens.
Sure. I think they have.
That it was last year.
I think two things are true. I mean, three things are true if you want to throw that in there. Number one, they're not as good as they were last year pretty conclusively. Number two, they probably have ticked upwards in the last few weeks. And number three, the last good passing attack they faced was the Bengals that carved them up.
The chat's calling you out here saying when they moved to Cutlets, we were talking about how they were tanking. That was the tank move.
Yeah.
That you said. I mean, they did skip over Drew Lock. For a reason, right?
My point is that this is what I said at the time, that Daniel Jones was not benched for football reasons. Daniel Jones was benched so they didn't have to guarantee a sum of money next year and they could get rid of him in the offseason. But he's still by far the best quarterback they have on that roster. He's better than Cutlets. He's better than Drew Lock. And my point is simply that everyone was so ready to bench Daniel Jones because of how bad this season's gone without actually acknowledging that he's probably the best option you have.
Oh, yeah,
still.
He's better than Drew Lock. I mean, he's more consistent than Drew Lock. Yeah.
Right. And then it was once we've made the determination we're going to bench Daniel Jones to save that guaranteed money, then it was they skipped over Drew Lock or skipped over Cutlets to go to Drew Lock. It's like Drew Lock's not, he's not good either.
Yeah. That's why it's 16.5.
Sorry, they skipped over Lock to go to Cutlets, and then Cutlets got hurt, and Drew Lock comes in anyway. Either way, the point is both those guys are bad.
Ravens have the Giants this week, the rematch with the Steelers, so they're going to be part of that whole, let's play 3 games in 11 days deal, right?
Yep.
They'll play the Steelers and then the Texans, and then finish with the Browns. So I always think about the underdogs in this game, a way to pull it off. Tyrone Tracy, to me, it's like ball control. Ravens go for some 4th downs. You make some stops. You need some in-play underdog, right? Fake punt and, be aggressive, do some stuff.
This is one of those ones where the only way you can construct a scenario where the Giants win is by weird things happening. Young players having games of their season / careers, the Ravens having random turnovers and, special teams goofs. Weird stuff has to happen for the Giants to win this game.
And then from a Giants perspective, don't know if Daboll and Joe Shane are playing for their jobs or whatever it is, but the Lions haven't won since week 5 against the Seahawks. The Giants, what did I say?
Lions.
Wow. Brains all over the place right now. No, the Lions are awesome. I'm just trying to get more Lions fans listening.
Because they pay the bills.
They pay the bills. Giants haven't lost in a while. Won in a while. Just forget it.
Well, they're now in this.
Wrap this game up. But they got the Ravens, Falcons, Colts, and Eagles. They could finish the year with 2 wins.
Yeah, and
they're in the mix for number 1 overall right now.
From their perspective, that would be great, except that probably gets everybody fired.
Right, that's what I mean. Do you have to show signs of life to keep jobs? I don't know.
Yeah, they're in this weird spot where the best thing that can happen for this team institutionally is for them to get the number 1 overall pick. But they're already under a ton of pressure. And, you can tell, the way they're being questioned in press conferences, et cetera, Daboll and Shane, I think, are both under an amazing amount of pressure. If they lose 4 more games to end the season, and what would that losing streak be? 11?
Yeah, bad.
They're not surviving that. They're getting fired, so. Right? I don't even know if they can survive it if they get a couple of wins down the stretch. But yeah.
Oh, make a pick. 16.5. Why is it so big? This spread.
I hate that. I've picked Baltimore, and I can't stand that. Can they really cover two more than 2 touchdowns?
I'll take Baltimore.
Same. Don't like it.
New England, look at this loaded 4 o'clock window. New England Patriots at the Arizona Cardinals. Some Drake May football. Cardinals by 6.5 here. They're 6-7. Patriots coming off their bye. They're 3-10. What are you looking for in this one?
There's not a lot to be excited about with this game.
I think watching more Drake May data points.
More Drake May data points.
Yeah, get to watch Drake May against the team that schemes it up defensively a little bit, right? The all out blitzes.
Yeah.
I mean, May's an interesting storyline the entire time, right? That's why people early in the year were, from a fan perspective, saying, "Oh, who wants to watch Jacoby Brissett?" And I was saying, well, from a, you got to do what's best for the organization standpoint. You got to sit May and develop him and everything. And by the way, let's look back at that. I mean, they sat Brissett, were giving May those first team reps, which was more than they usually do with backups. And did they actually set him up for success? Other than the fact that they've got the worst receiving situation, the worst offensive line in the NFL, that's a thing.
Yeah.
Other than that, though, did they at least handle it pretty well? It seems like they did.
Other than the fact that the personnel around him is atrocious, they have done well by Drake May in terms of they didn't throw him out there week one. They did prepare him in practice, et cetera. I think generally the scheme has been pretty good for him as well. It's just that he has no help.
Yeah. So I think he's an interesting watch every single week. And then, Kyler Murray is too with Arizona. And, for the 15th straight week, we'll say if Kyler Murray plays special football, good luck.
Yeah. The Patriots, so their offensive line is the worst offensive line in the NFL by PFF's pass blocking efficiency metric. I think it is. We've been debating who's the worst offensive line in the NFL. I think it genuinely is the Patriots, probably by a reasonable distance.
I mean, they've had a revolving door of players who probably aren't starting on any roster next year.
Well, who's been
playing.
They're so bad as a group that it doesn't really matter when they're rotating bodies in and out because there's no discernible drop off, right?
No.
Like a lot of teams, when they have to go to the bench, it's like, man, this is a real problem because the player that we're replacing is nowhere near or is way better than the player that he's being replaced by. The Patriots' offensive line is so bad that they can basically rotate bodies in and out, and it makes no discernible difference to the quality of the offensive line. Like it's a terrible group that, as a collective, is borderline NFL caliber. And the whole group is now put in front of Drake May and said, "Yeah, go help out the rookie," and the receiving corps isn't much better either. So it's a rough supporting cast for the Patriots, but Drake May has looked pretty good despite that. And really, I mean, it sounds a stupid way of phrasing it, but outside of the glaring mistakes he makes, he's been very good.
No, it's a fair
his
analysis.
baseline has actually been very good. It's just that he drags it all down by one or two boneheaded decisions per game.
Yeah, there's been a few of those in there. And honestly, I expected more given, like I said, I think there's one offensive lineman that the Patriots are trotting out there that has a chance to start on an NFL roster next year. And out of the 10 that they've rotated in there. So I think that's something to watch for. Arizona, I think the Christian Gonzalez at corner for New England going up against Marvin Harrison Jr. Interesting matchup. And all of Marvin Harrison Jr.'s development. Can he finish the season strong here? He's had a pretty good rookie season, but maybe not to the expectation of generational wide receiver prospect that maybe some people thought. And I hate using the word generational, but I just did.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep an eye on. And Arizona's still alive. They're still technically alive.
They're really in a hole now. I mean, they have basically torpedoed their season in the last 3 weeks. This team, remember, was it 3 weeks ago they were number one in the division?
Yeah.
Two losses to Seattle in 3 weeks and the Minnesota loss in the middle. That's killed them, basically, because they're behind Seattle, who is the team currently in first in that division. According to NFL.com, even with a win, Arizona only has an 11% chance of making the playoffs now.
They are in the hunt.
Because they're 2 games back, but from Seattle, who has the tiebreaker by sweeping them. So they're really 3 games back with only 4 games to play.
They are merely in the hunt.
Correct.
That's all
and quite a way behind in the hunt. Like the Rams basically have a 50-50 shot of making it with a win. Cardinals, even with a win, are still only at 10%, 11%.
Pillow fight up front. Arizona's defensive line against the Patriots' offensive line.
Yeah, with the exception of the fact that Arizona at least schemes up pressure extremely well, right? Yes. So in this world, from a personnel one-on-one matchup point of view, it's weakness against weakness. But they're going to bring stunts, misdirection, sim pressures, all those kinds of things to the table, in addition to their personnel.
All right, man. 6.5 for Arizona. Where are you going with this one?
I'm going to go with the Cardinals.
Take New England. Sneaky underdogs. They'll keep it close. By the way, there's reports out of New England that Gerard Mayo's coaching for his job here.
Coaching for his job.
So you've got, I think people expecting Antonio Pierce maybe to be coaching for his job, Gerard Mayo, a couple first-year coaches, maybe.
The grass is not always greener outside of the Bill Belichick environment.
I mean, to be fair, Bill left them a 4-13 team, and they ran it back with all the same guys. So, hey, it is what it is.
But he was identified as the problem, you see.
Yeah. All right, Kansas City Chiefs at the Cleveland Browns. Chiefs favored by 4.5 here. This one's Sunday at 1 o'clock. Over-unders 43.5. Looks like we got heavy rain potentially for this game.
Moderate rain.
Moderate rain.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. You got everything right up there. Can the Browns?
Sloppy, though. Moderate rain, slop.
Slop. It's like we have a nice sloppy December game in Cleveland. That's what I'm looking for. How are the Chiefs going to pull this one off? I predicted that they beat the Lions in the Super Bowl with a walk-off safety. This could be the walk-off safety game. Jameis runs out of the back of the end zone to win. How do the Chiefs pull this game off? How do the Chiefs win by 3?
Okay.
Chiefs haven't covered, by the way. They're 6-1 in their last 7 games. Haven't covered one spread.
Correct. The Chiefs will be up by 3. Jameis will have the ball with 2 minutes to go. Drive, with 98 yards to go. He has now got it into the red zone. Jameis fires the ball directly into the hands of Jerry Jeudy in the end zone for what would be the game-winning touchdown, except it's wet, it's sloppy. The ball slides straight through Jerry Jeudy's hands, lands into the hands of a Chiefs defensive back who kneels it out game.
Chiefs win 9-6.
They win by the 3. That's how it's going to end.
I like it. There are some interesting...
And Jerry Jeudy, by the way, this is a guy who's had questionable hands previously, but has been locked in.
Right, he's been
in the last few weeks, catching everything. It's going to be right here, right?
Yeah.
2 hands on it, and it's just going to go straight through.
The Browns have the pieces to pull this upset, right? Because you
have,
in
any given week.
In any given week, you've got high-end Jameis ability. You have what Judy's been able to do. Kansas City's pass defense has been a weakness. I know that they've cracked down and not given up a lot of points, but they've given up some explosives. And so there are some big play opportunities to be had there against Kansas City that maybe didn't exist earlier in the year. Then you have this whole left tackle situation. This one's interesting to me. Myles Garrett, we highlight him every week and how he can wreck a game, but everybody has been wrecking games against Kansas City. And not so much like the whole game, but again, 3 or 4 plays.
Yeah.
And so you've got an injured DJ Humphries, and the 2 guys that he replaced all have struggled at left tackle. And so this reminds me a little bit, Kansas City knows this. How are they going to game plan around Myles Garrett? And the one game historically that stands out was 2022. The Niners defense was really good. Nick Bosa it was middle of the season. Nick Bosa's having a great season. And it felt like their entire play calling effort was to have Nick Bosa on a string, Kansas City. And so they would screen. And that's what Kansas City does really well. Like as soon as you start to get pressure on Mahomes, they call a screen, right? They soften it up and let you feel like you're winning, and then they dump it in behind you. Jet sweeps. How are they going to attack Myles Garrett? Misdirection, screens, keeping him off balance, rolling Mahomes out. I feel like they'll be able to, keep him out of the game for the most part, but it's just those 2, 3, 4 plays, dominant wins. If they can, blow up some plays, Garrett has a chance to make a big impact.
We also saw against Pittsburgh how hard it is to do that. Pittsburgh were throwing everything they had at Myles Garrett, and he was still wrecking the game in the first half to the point where they're asking Tomlin, hey, how are you going to slow down Myles Garrett in the second half? This might actually be. I generally think, as a concept, the mid/pregame coach or player interview is a complete and total waste of time.
So stupid.
And should be eliminated. It adds nothing to the broadcast.
Nothing at all.
This, however, might be the lone exception to that. People will point to the Dan Campbell thing where he called the interception. He didn't. He did, but he called it 15 minutes ago.
We got to force a turnover.
But that was only interesting because of when they chose to air it, not because of when he said it. He said it 20 minutes before that. It's just that they played the clip 3 seconds before the guy got the interception. So it sounded cool. The Mike Tomlin thing, though, he came out and he said, look, we're already doing everything we can. We're dedicating everything we've got to stop Myles Garrett, but he's that good. There's nothing more I can do with this. And he's right. They didn't have any other tricks. They were already chipping him every play, sending double teams, they were doing everything they had, and Myles Garrett was still winning. So he has the ability to wreck a game even when the game plan is designed around trying to prevent him do that. The left tackle thing for Kansas City has been so bad, though, this year that even with game planning against it, there have been plays where Mahomes, this savant at avoiding pressure is under duress to the point where he can't function. Like he basically got the left tackle benched a couple of weeks ago for the left guard, right? Not for like a better answer, not for DJ Humphries, quick rush him onto the field. He's like, get that guy off the field, even if I have to move the left guard out there and shuffle the offensive line. That's what they did. So this year, Mahomes' pressure to sack rate, the thing we were talking about with Caleb Williams, is up at 20%. He's never been anywhere near that.
He's usually 10, 11.
Right. He has, his best year is 9.6. The last 2 years have been 10.1, 10.6. The worst season of his career up until this point had been 13.4%, and he's now at 20%. Because that offensive line has been so bad, the last few weeks, we've got 5 sacks against Carolina, 5 sacks against the Raiders, 3 sacks by the Chargers. And that was with DJ Humphries, as the upgrade in the offensive line until he got injured. I think it's a genuine problem for them.
And so I think it's a really interesting game because of the volatility of both sides of Cleveland's offense and defense, right? Their ability to let receivers run wide open, their ability to play lockdown defense, Myles Garrett in there, the Jameis Winston coaster. A lot of interesting things here. Plus, just to put a bow on this game, Kansas City starting this whole thing, Mahomes wasn't happy 3 games in 11 days. So they're going to come back with a Saturday game next week and then the Wednesday game. And again, they're one of 4 teams doing it, right? Yep. So it's not just the Chiefs, but 4 teams. They're all going to play against each other. They're going to the Texans, Steelers, and Ravens are the other 3. So the Chiefs have to come back on the short rest on Saturday to play the Texans and then short rest again to play the Christmas game at Pittsburgh. But I do feel like Cleveland has a chance to pull this upset this week. So will the Chiefs cover for the first time in 7 weeks, I believe it is, by 4.5?
I believe that they will. And having talked it through, I don't like it because I do feel that Myles Garrett has the capacity to ruin this game.
I skewed it. I mean, I gave you the underdog view here. I do think Kansas City's uber luck runs out a little bit as far as wins and losses go. It doesn't mean they're not good or can't make the playoff run again. I just think at some point they're going to lose another game here. So
no, I think it's true. And look, other random non-factor pass rushers have been a problem for Kansas City this year because their left tackle spot is that bad.
Caleb Chase on catching strays.
Right. Myles Garrett is, if you listen to Brandon Thorne, the best pass rusher in the NFL.
I think Brandon's right. Give me Cleveland. Harry's going to take Kansas City here. All right, we got 5 games to go, but let's get to your PrizePicks lineup.
Excellent.
You ready to go?
Yes. I'm a little bit sad that I didn't have A.J. Brown in this, having thought that through a little bit more.
Make a different one. Make a separate one.
Can't. No. We're not doing it. I'm going to start with leaning into Bryce Young's success. I believe that as favorite, he's going to embrace the favorite moniker. He's used to it. Alabama, they were always favorite. Always. Bryce Young is going to lean into being favorite and pass for more than 196.5 passing yards. He's going to go over 200 against Dallas. Easy. Definitely. Guaranteed. Not actually a guarantee.
Nothing's a guarantee.
Saquon Barkley.
Well, you've done your research and you feel good about this projection.
I do. I feel good about this line. No, I feel good about this projection that he'll have more than 196.5 passing yards. Saquon Barkley, we mentioned earlier, that's 100 yards against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is better than that. Saquon Barkley will therefore have less than 100.5 rushing yards. Wow. I think the Steelers are going to keep him under the 100. Puka Nacua will have more than a half rushing and receiving touchdowns. He's going to get in the end zone. But Puka Nacua was unstoppable last week against, theoretically, a pretty half-decent defense.
That's tonight. You're going on the
Again,
Thursday.
I got to stop putting these things at risk on Thursday. But yes, I believe the Puka Nacua within that Rams offense with Matthew Stafford firing and the offense cooking will get into the end zone, score a touchdown, and have success. And then we have the free pick, essentially. Patrick Mahomes will have more than half a passing yard.
I don't know. It's going to be rainy in Cleveland.
We'll
see the sloppy game.
Still think he'll get a yard.
All right, man. Let's recap. I like it. That's a good lineup.
Bryce Young, more than 196.5 passing yards against the Dallas defense, where he's favored for the first time. Saquon, less than 100.5 rushing yards against the formidable Steelers defense. Puka Nacua, more than half a rushing and receiving touchdown tonight on Thursday. And then Patrick Mahomes, more than a half passing yard.
So that's the Mahomes free square that is available at PrizePicks this week. And here's my lineup from yesterday. I'm going Jordan Addison, going back to his dominant game last week. I think he'll do it again, more than 53.5 receiving yards against the Bears, expecting some attention from Jalen Johnson to Justin Jefferson to open things up for Addison. Kirk Cousins, we haven't talked about this game yet, but indoors against the Raiders. Monday Night Football, more than 242.5 passing yards. Tony Pollard, more than 66.5 rushing yards against the Cincinnati Bengals defense that has struggled on stopping the run and the pass, and of course the free square. Mahomes, more than a half passing yard. So you guys can join as well. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code CheckTheMic, $50 instantly. That's what you get when you play $5. All right, 5 games. Let's do it. Washington Commanders at the New Orleans Saints in the Dome. Commanders favored.
Yeah,
by 7.5 here.
Saints obviously without
5 versus 5.
Derek Carr because of the potentially problematic scaphoid. We had an email come in. Who was that from?
Talking the scaphoid?
Yeah, Ryan Gallup emailed in, who apparently, as a rugby person, has extensive personal experience with scaphoid injuries.
Did he email you? I didn't see this one.
Yeah, may well
just
been me. Two main issues with them. They're often missed in the initial X-ray, apparently. And it's a rare bone that only has a singular blood supply. I believe that is the crux of my mother's concern of the scaphoid every time you had a wrist injury, is singular blood supply, meaning that a significant break can cut off blood flow to certain areas and become necrotic, a.k.a. the bone dies. Obviously not good. So there you go. That's
so
the
what's
concern.
the recovery on the scaphoid?
I don't think it's not so much
important.
that it's going to take longer or be a more complicated recovery. It's just that it's a very awkward bone to be breaking.
Interesting. And then who the heck are we getting if he can't go?
Rattler versus Hayner.
Yeah.
It's been weird because Hayner's been the guy that goes in the game, right? But
he's the
when
game
they had
backup.
the previous opportunity, it was like, let's throw Rattler out there.
Let's talk about Washington. Their run game against New Orleans. The Brian Brzee, who made all those plays against last week against the Giants, batted passes, sack, blocked field goal and everything. He's kind of struggled against the run, still struggles with pad level. I think you can have some success up front against the Saints defense running the ball in this one. Favorable matchup, I think, for the Commanders. And interested to see what they look like down the stretch here as they're trying to get into the playoffs and do some damage. Currently, the number 7 seed, they're 8-5, Washington. With the NFC West, we've talked about how the records aren't great, but they're in the mix for the wild card as well. The Rams are a game behind Washington. Falcons and the Cardinals and the Niners are all 2 games behind Washington. But there's a chance that the Rams and the loser in the NFC West could technically, take over the number 7 seed from Washington.
Yeah, I mean, it's a reasonably high leverage game. Again, if you look at the odds on NFL.com, if Washington wins this game, they're up at 87% chance of making it. If they lose, they're down to 59%. So they're still likely, more likely than not, either way. But losing this game would definitely make it more concerning than they're comfortable with. Like a Washington team that's looked like they're headed to the postseason all the way through the season don't have that much room for error. But the other thing is, a lot of people have been waiting, I think, for this team to sort of fall apart a bit, whether it's Jaden Daniels returning to earth, whether it's the Cliff Kingsbury decline that everyone's been expecting. None of those things look like they're happening. There was a rough patch, but that was when he got a rib injury, right? He seems to be back playing like Jaden Daniels again. The offense has been doing well. It still looks like it's functioning at a high level. It's not being exposed. It's not being found out. They're even starting to move Terry McLaurin around a bit. Not just you're playing left wide receiver every snap, the way Cliff has traditionally operated within his offense. So I don't know that this team is going to drop off.
I think Daniels is getting there's more Bo Nix hype as far as catching up to Daniels as far as the offensive rookie of the year. We've already talked about maybe Brock Bowers should be that guy.
Yeah.
Daniels is creeping into that territory where the, say, PFF grade, the thing that's trying to quantify his actual on-field performance is much higher than just traditional stats. He only has 14 passing touchdowns versus 8 picks. Passer rating's just 99.4. I don't know where EPA is or anything like that, but number 5 overall PFF grade this year, because including passing and rushing, and again, just incredibly impressed by what he's been doing.
Yeah.
Did the injury affect him a little bit in the middle of the season, or did he just come back down to earth, right? Like early in the year, he was having those 21 for 23 passing games and, completing 85% of his passes. He's not going to do that his entire career. So did he just come back down to earth and that was natural, or was it
last
injury?
week, though, against Tennessee?
Yeah, but it wasn't that same complete dominance that we saw early in the year. Either way, in totality, very impressive rookie season, dangerous runner, opportunistic runner, and he's been extremely accurate throwing to all levels of the field. And we saw a little bit more creativity with Terry McLaurin, maybe, moving him around. So all of that stuff. Watching Washington, their bye coming out. Are there changes? Can they finish strong in this last 4 games here? And as you mentioned, about 30% of playoff probability on the line with this game against the Saints.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel's been incredibly dynamic. His adjusted completion rate per PFF is at 79 point something percent, like almost 80%. It's an incredibly high number. His actual completion rate is a tick under 70%. I mean, he's within sight of the single season record, right? Drew Brees' mark. As you said, incredibly dynamic as a runner. Also one of the lowest turnover-worthy play rates in the NFL as a rookie, which is incredibly difficult to do. He's been fantastic for them. And I genuinely think his relative weak stretch this season was down to that rib injury. I think now he's back. We're going to see what we saw earlier in the season. The question, if I'm looking for an area of decline on Washington, the question would be on defense, where that group looked like it had turned a corner, and the last few weeks has suggested maybe that wasn't true. So that's the side where I'm more interested to see if they can maintain or get back to their high level.
All right, man, let's make picks. Sunday at 1, Washington by 7.5 here.
I think Washington will do it. I mean, Jaden Daniels is really good, and whoever they're starting at quarterback for the Saints probably isn't.
Yeah, I'll take Washington as well. One time I'll take the favorite. Harry will also take Washington to cover the 7.5. The second Monday Night Football game, Atlanta Falcons at the Las Vegas Raiders. This is the 8:30 start. So the second game, Falcons favored by 3.5 here. They're 6-7. Raiders 2-11.
Yeah, huge amount of. This was another one where the Falcons have put themselves in a hole, whereas they were previously first place a few weeks ago. With a win, they get the good side of the coin flip. They get to 51% if they win this game, chance of making the postseason. If they lose, they are down at 20%. So another game with like 30 percentage points of playoff probability on the line.
High leverage game, man. And intern Anthony highlights the second easiest schedule now for Atlanta. I've been talking about Tampa Bay for a while, but Atlanta has now gone through their more difficult stretch. Tampa Bay's had some of their easier games that they've played now. It's pretty even the rest of the way as far as schedule goes. So Atlanta gets to play the Raiders, the Giants, the Panthers, and then the Commanders, their probably most difficult game. So got to take care of business here. Cousins has no touchdowns, 8 picks last few weeks. Is this his last chance? Like, is there even a chance that, like, if he doesn't play well against the Raiders, that they go to Michael Penix for the playoff push?
I still feel like the narrative on Cousins has been overblown. Like, okay, yes, those statistics that you gave out are true. 0 touchdowns in 4 games in addition to 8 picks. That's bad. As a touchdown to interception ratio, 0 to 8 is in the wrong direction.
Big
right?
analytics guy.
Correct. On the other hand, in that time, he's thrown for over 300 yards twice. He has 6 big-time throws. Granted, the turnover-worthy plays and the turnovers have been a huge problem. But, like, it's not like this is not Cousins has completely forgotten how to play. The offense is not functioning. The pass game can't move the ball. He's done a lot of good in that time. It's just that there have been no passing touchdowns at the end of it.
Let's look at the season, though, as a total here.
Okay.
Lowest big-time throw rate of his career.
Sure.
Highest turnover-worthy play rate of his career since 2014, we'll say, when he wasn't even a full-time starter. So, in totality, it hasn't been great. It hasn't flowed. It hasn't flowed perfectly because it's like, oh, he started bad and then he got good and then he got bad again. Like, it hasn't been this clear descent or clear whatever it is. And then I would say,
but it's not the non-functional catastrophe it's being made out to be.
But the point I would make is, why is it not non-functional? You've got maybe the best 1-2 punch at running back in the entire NFL. You still have Drake London. You have Darnell Mooney. You have Kyle Pitts for whatever he's worth. These are good playmakers, man. And I know they've been better than they were in the Arthur Smith era, in the Desmond Ridder era. But that's the whole point. Like, could Michael Penix Jr., that's the question they're asking. Could he unlock all of those playmakers? Could you plop another quarterback in there right now and have more success? If they don't do it against this Raiders defense, That's like a viable question here for the last 3 weeks of the season.
Yeah, maybe. I think Cousins has been better. Like let's use the last 4 weeks with that 0 touchdowns thing. Only one of those games is a bad PFF grade, right? He was atrocious against the Chargers. I don't think anybody is out there trying to defend that. He was extremely bad. That was the worst game we've seen from him in a long period of time. The other 3 games, he was fine. 2 of them, he was pretty good. It's just that they had a couple of mistakes in there. And yes, the turnover-worthy plays have been a problem. Like, that has been the biggest issue with his career, with his season this year, is the turnover-worthy plays have spiked through the roof relative to his previous career baseline. That's been a massive problem. But he's been okay. And yes, there is absolutely a chance that Michael Penix Jr., particularly if you look at how the rookies generally this year have done, might be better right now. Then I think there's also a pretty damn good chance that he isn't. And I would say as soon as their season's done, throw him in there. Let's see. Yeah. But up until that point, I don't think Cousins has been playing badly enough to be benched.
No, probably not there, but I do wonder. I'm bringing it up because I do wonder how close those conversations are, knowing that they probably like Penix because they drafted him 8th overall.
Right.
So, who's starting for the Raiders? Ritter? Oh, Ritter revenge.
No, they are saying that Aiden O'Connell
he's fine now?
He's definitely not fine. He's got a bone bruise, which typically will put you out for a couple of weeks. He is, however, likely to try and gut it out.
Nice. I'd like to see that.
I don't know about that.
Raiders played tough the last couple of weeks. Gave the Chiefs a game, battled back into that Tampa Bay game. Just not enough there. So keep an eye. Jack Jones making plays on Kirk Cousins in this one. I think Cousins will have a lot of success. I'm bringing all that up, but I think Cousins will have a lot of success against this Raiders defense. That's why I took his PrizePicks projection.
Yeah.
I think they're going to move the ball against the Raiders here.
I think the Falcons offense will probably do quite well. I feel like the Falcons defense might do quite well against an injured Aiden O'Connell trying to gut it out, or Desmond Ritter who comes in at some point because O'Connell can't gut it out.
Yeah.
Atlanta all of a sudden in the last couple of weeks seems to have discovered a pass rush. Last week, that seemed to come at the expense of the really good coverage unit they'd had in the back end. So I don't know if they're able to have those 2 things at once. If they are, it could be a long day for the Raiders offense.
Let's make some picks. Falcons by 3.5 here. Game 2 of the Monday night doubleheader.
Falcons. I think concerns have been overblown by Cousins. I think this is a bounce-back game for him.
I will also take the Falcons.
Kirk go in Vegas. What more could you want?
Cincinnati Bengals at the Tennessee Titans Sunday at 1. The Bengals favored by 4.5 here. They're up to 5-8. Titans are 3-10. Brian Callahan, Titans head coach, going up against his former team in Cincinnati.
Very true.
More familiarity around the league here.
Mm-hmm. Now this is a massive leverage game because if the Bengals win, their 3% chance of making the playoffs climbs all the way to 4%.
Wow.
If they lose, it drops all the way to 1.
Now that's assuming what from other teams?
Don't ask questions that I don't have the answers to. I don't know.
So it's a big game.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't get to 4% until you're at 3%. So here they are. Cincinnati still has a chance.
Yeah, massive leverage game.
Joe Burrow MVP case. Tough to make your MVP case at 1 o'clock. That's the challenge.
Against the Titans.
That's the challenge.
Yeah. I mean, have you seen, what do you make of Joe Burrow seemingly trying to strong-arm the Bengals into signing T. Higgins, in addition to signing Jamar Chase that they've got to do, having already signed Joe Burrow?
I kind of like it. I like Higgins as my 2, unless he's making 1 money.
Yeah. Which presumably he will be coming off this season if you sign him.
It's going to be a challenge because I think,
by the way, Jamar Chase, who you didn't sign last offseason, perfectly justifiably so. You made him wait a year, but he's having the kind of year where making him wait is pushing that price pretty high.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough to keep them all because if Higgins going to want 25, 28,
right,
and Chase is going to be at 35 plus.
Yep,
I don't think you can do that for both.
I mean, I think you can, but it's definitely going to have significant ramifications.
Not with everything else.
Yeah, it's definitely going to have significant ramifications. Like Trey Hendrickson is already not happy. He's your best player on defense by a mile.
Yeah, I mean, I'm usually give me the quarterback and the playmakers and we'll figure everything else out type of person. We'll win through the draft. But if this year showed anything, man, you're not winning even with having that incredible passing attack.
It is, however, I mean, from a team building roster construction standpoint, they're exactly the players that you would put the money into. If you were saying, where do you want your highest paid players to be? If you have 5 or 6 of them, quarterback, wide receiver, best pass rusher. Okay, you want a best defensive back in there somewhere, but okay, second receiver. it's the right area. It's just that it would be an absolute, probably unprecedented sum of money tied up in 4 guys.
Yeah, it would be. But I think this year's showing, man, they might have to deploy those resources across 3 or 4 players instead of 1.
I'm only bringing up that question because this game just isn't that interesting. You know?
No, I agree.
The Bengals, it's the same story. The offense is really good. Joe Burrow is fantastic. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins is all good. Chase Brown's been playing really well for them at running back. The offense will be great. Tennessee's defense is feisty, but is losing some teeth with injuries.
This is good.
And then Will Levis,
it's just great review.
It's just meh.
It's a great review. He might have some big play opportunities against the Bengals. Trey Hendrickson against J.C. Latham is an interesting matchup. I think Latham, he's that the rookie offensive tackle for the Titans. Overall, I think he's been pretty impressive, but he's had some awful reps in there.
Yep.
Hendrickson's made everybody look pretty bad, so I think that's interesting. Glad you brought up Higgins.
Yeah.
You summed up the game really well.
Thank you.
Let's make some picks and save my boys. You going to do the game time read for me?
No, because I don't have that handy.
It's in
Cincinnati
the
are
chat.
going to win and cover.
I'll also take Cincinnati. Janko dropped it in there for you.
I know, but then I have to click on the document and find it and stuff.
I'll do it. I'm going to tell you about our friends over at GameTime. Where Sam and I get all of our tickets. And I've been telling you for a while, if we need tickets, NFL, college, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever it is, this is where I go. It's all GameTime. It filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. The curation makes it easier to find what you want. So whether it is sports, concerts, comedy, theater, you get what you want with the curation. Really easy to use. The all-in pricing toggle is outstanding. You just click a button, and you have no surprise fees at checkout. You get the panoramic view of your seat, so you know exactly what you're getting into when you're looking at the app. And GameTime has a lowest price guarantee, or they will credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is also covered by the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying all your tickets with GameTime. So download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code CheckTheMic for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code CheckTheMic for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it?
Game time.
Thank you. Thanks for saving me.
See, I think generally, if we're prioritizing where your voice is going to go, you think
it's
far more important that we dedicate your voice to the good people at GameTime and letting everyone know than it is about you, discussing the Jets and the Jags. That's all I'm saying. If we have to choose, pick our battles, the battle should be GameTime.
True. So we did it. Go check out GameTime.
We did it.
2 more games. New York Jets at the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Speaking of the Jets or the Jags.
Good segue.
Yeah.
Jets by 3.5 here, favored once again. Mac Jones versus Aaron Rodgers. 3 years ago, this was supposed to be Zach Wilson versus Trevor Lawrence. 1 and 2 in the draft. And nope, it's Mac Jones and Aaron Rodgers.
I think this is the only game this week between 2 eliminated teams.
So we'll spend
the only game with no playoff implications whatsoever.
The most interesting thing here, I think, is Aaron Rodgers playing in Florida, where I think the historic numbers are awful.
Oh yeah,
yeah. You got to factor that in.
Enigma.
You factored that into your pick. I see who you picked.
Yeah. I mean, on the one hand, the Jets' offense was much better last week. It finally looked like it was supposed to look, and it still wasn't enough. They found a way of losing that game anyway.
They'll definitely move the ball against the Jags' defense.
You would think so, right? Yes, even with Rodgers in Florida.
If the Jets played the Chiefs, given that the Jets always find a unique way to lose and the Chiefs find a unique way to win, what would that be?
I got nothing. I don't know. I had a good one for the Browns versus the Chiefs. I got nothing for Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, you don't have anything.
Yeah. I mean, look, the Jets' offense is actually kind of fun to watch when it's firing. Like, that part will be interesting. The Jags, I mean, neither side of the ball is particularly entertaining. I will say Brian Thomas Jr., the rookie, going up against either Sauce Gardner or DJ Reed will be a pretty enticing thing to watch. The Jets have given up some big plays.
Sauce has a hamstring, but I think he's playing through it.
Yeah, the Jets have given up some big plays. The Jags have had big plays to be taken all the way through the season with Brian Thomas. They haven't necessarily hit half of them, but they're there every single game. That will be, I think, pretty entertaining.
Big brand game for me, too. You've got Morgan Moses head-to-head with Trayvon Walker.
That's very true.
Big brand game. You need a big game for Morgan Moses, The great Morgan Moses. Olufashnu going up against Josh Hines-Allen on the other side. That's a fun matchup.
Tough assignment.
So Sunday at 1, there's a lot of fun matchups to watch here.
Tough assignment for the rookie.
It's a matchup game.
Matchup game.
Mac Jones played pretty well after he missed that deep ball last week too. And, the young receivers for the Jags been getting open, making some plays the last couple of weeks. Parker Washington, Brian Thomas Jr. that you mentioned. So it's not all lost. There's stuff to watch here.
It's not all lost.
Over-under is 40.5. The Aaron Rodgers Florida thing, I don't have the numbers handy, but this was, remember they got smoked by Brady's Bucks 38-10 or something like that. Then the next year, I think it was the next year, the New Orleans game got moved to Florida, and they played the Saints in Jacksonville, and they lose like 38-3. And Rodgers, he always just played horribly in Florida.
Well, throughout his career, Rodgers would every now and again just have an absolutely atrocious, abysmal game, and they always seem to be against
Florida. He's not a humidity guy. Can't handle it.
Not a humidity guy.
So that's why we're going to make our picks, and I'm going to take Jacksonville because it's in Florida.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm going to take Jacksonville because I don't think the Jets can win games by a huge amount of points.
Harry believes that they can. Harry will take the Jets to win by 3.5. Massive NFL draft implications here.
Yes, no playoff implications, but significant draft implications.
Right. So Rodgers can screw up the Jets draft.
Right.
By winning.
Which he's going to want to, because otherwise, he seems to want to play again. I don't know if anyone wants him to play again.
Will be interesting to see. Let's wrap it up. Thursday Night Football tonight. Los Angeles Rams at the San Francisco 49ers. Niners favored by 3. They're 6-7. Rams 7-6. They played earlier in the season. Rams saved their season against the Niners. Remember this one-sided matchup where Kyle Shanahan always seems to beat Sean McVay, except in the NFC Championship in 2021. Well, the Rams pulled it off earlier this year with the win, and that was one of those games when you look back, how did these teams get here? This is one of those games I reference where the Niners missed a field goal and blew a 10-plus point lead, and the Rams saved their season to be here, sitting here at in second place heading into this Thursday night matchup.
Yeah, I can never remember which way round the rock, paper, scissors works in that division.
This one I remember because the only time McVay won for a while was the NFC Championship. Last year, McVay won again, but it was the Carson Wentz versus Sam Darnold matchup. Remember, Week 18? That's like you throw it out. It's like a snow game. Throw it out. But this year, earlier, the actual Stafford-Purdy matchup, and the Rams won.
So with a win, the Rams would get to the coin flip, 49% of the chance of making the playoffs if they win the game. If they lose, only 23% of the time. The 49ers are now in such a hole.
This is interesting that it's this low.
Yeah, that even if they win this game and get to 500, 7-7, with a win against the Rams, they would still only be at 11% because so many other losses are within the division.
The tiebreakers are just killing them.
Yeah, they need to win all of the division games remaining to have any shot at all.
Niners are going to be the team you don't want to play late in the regular season, but probably won't make the playoffs.
Right.
Because they're capable. We just got this report out. Drake Greenlaw is going to practice now.
Coming off that Achilles injury. Yeah.
Add that to the Chiefs' luck.
Really,
the guy tore his Achilles running out to the field to play defense against the Chiefs.
Oh, such a weird play. I never cease to be the young kids, right? When you're young, it never even occurs to you that can happen to your body. That one day something is just going to go snap.
Something can snap when you move.
Right, exactly. And then the older you get, the more acutely aware you are that every possible movement you make can snap something.
Move.
Right.
That's why I sit at my desk all day.
Am
I going to work out and risk injury?
Like if that sort of sunk into your consciousness when you were playing sports, younger in life, you'd be paralyzed by fear. I can't do anything because the body could just snap.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Very scary.
The guy's a professional athlete, now has firsthand experience. If he could just run out to play a game and his Achilles just goes ding, now you're out for a year. Horrible. Anyway.
What else you got in this game?
Well, the Chicago game last week was, you were saying, look, the 49ers are still capable. If it wasn't for that Bears game last week, I don't know if we'd be saying that. Like, that was the first indication that they are, in fact, still capable of having that kind of game for a long time.
Yeah, it was. It's interesting because I think Purdy's still good. I think if you're thinking long-term here and you're trying to figure out what his contract looks like and what the Niners are going to do, these situations where there's more pressure on him, and him elevating, an injured squad is important here.
With the 49ers, it's always their injured players, who's playing, who's not. And because it's the 49ers, Nick Bosa could be banked this week, or he could be out for the next 7.5 years. There's really no way of knowing. Could be hit by a bus. Who knows? So, I don't know.
We have no idea who could show up
But it makes
tonight.
a big impact. If they have Nick Bosa out there, that's a difference maker against this Rams offense. So when it's in the groove, Stafford, feeling it, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, they need a Nick Bosa out there to try and disrupt that.
And then can you bottle up last week's Stafford? My 10-year eternal question. Can you bottle up great Stafford and bring him every single week? I mean, maybe not to that level. No quarterback plays at that type of elite level. But, man, when they're on.
Last week was ridiculous. But even, they've had a few games, right, where they've just been in this zone.
Yeah.
Where it's like if they have all those guys in the field, Stafford, Kupp, Nacua, Kyron Williams, they can go on that kind of run where they just shred defense.
And I know part of it's the health on the offensive line. But the offense is all mostly back and healthy for the first time over the last couple of weeks here. And that is a factor. And then you get that young defense with what Jared Verse and Kobe Turner can do, playing pretty well. Cameron Kitchens making a lot of plays on the back end at safety. But, again, it's all like
my guy,
hit or miss for the Rams every single week. But, man, I think that offense can carry them. I think we could see a lot of points. FanDuel agrees, over-unders 49.5 here for tonight's game.
Yeah. I do think that the Rams offense will have some success. Again, with the caveat, if they get Bosa back, maybe that could change that dynamic because he is, a singularly dominant player on that defensive line. He's up there with Myles Garrett, with Micah Parsons, with the best players in the NFL rushing the passer. He could change that dynamic by himself.
And I would say last week they didn't have him, right?
Yeah.
Last week when they didn't have him, they had the 7 sacks. And so you might say, well, they don't need him. But that was
Caleb Williams.
Go back to our Caleb Williams analysis. They only pressured him 9 times.
Yeah.
And some of it was quick wins by the defensive line. They did have, Malik Collins had a really nice sack in there. Like, they had nice wins. But a lot of those were Caleb Williams holding the ball.
Yeah.
No one being open.
I don't know if you can call that play a coverage sack where all of the Bears players were within this table square footage, but it was that, not necessarily the pass rush.
The whole point is the connectedness to it.
Yes.
Whether it's not like a 4-second coverage sack, but if you literally don't even have an option to throw the ball, you're going to probably get sacked. You're going to have to scramble.
Yeah. It's the same thing. It just becomes a misnomer when you're like, that's a coverage sack. It's like, well, yeah.
And that's why we've always emphasized the same thing that Brandon Thorne emphasized yesterday, which I encourage people to go listen to, the O-line breakdown, defensive line breakdown. We encourage, isolating quick wins and domination up front from defensive linemen.
Right.
And the more often you do that, the more likely over time you're going to get sacks, but you're just going to disrupt plays.
Yeah. So Bosa's the guy that can do that.
I worry about the Niners being able to do that without a Bosa, despite a 7-sack game last week is
Correct.
the point.
So him being there or not, I think is a big variable in this game. And then the other thing is, that was the first time we had seen the Shanahan offense actually play like the Shanahan offense for a long time. Against what we've just described as a kind of declining force in the Chicago Bears defense. Can they do that again for a second week? Can they actually show up and have their good players fire and just move the ball and look good? Again, are they down to a 4th-string running back now? Garendo's got a foot injury.
Garendo might play tonight. They said he's trying to play.
Yeah.
The other aspect, and we do this we're very guilty of this all the time. The Rams won last week, 44-42.
Right.
Their defense was just as bad
as
the Bills' defense. But because they won, it's like, oh, look at we just focused on the offense. They got to play. But they were giving up a ton of big plays because Allen had the 6 touchdowns.
Yes.
There was a screen pass in there. There's a little dump off to Khalil Shakir where he's running through the defense. Like, they got to tackle better and not give up those explosives.
Yeah, the one difference, I think, is that a lot of that was based off Josh Allen being freaky. Like, it was slightly different. Like, Buffalo couldn't stop anything, right? They were giving up. There were plays where Puka Nacua was freaky, the sideline toe tap catch, etc. But there was also they just couldn't stop anything. Whereas the Rams defense, I think, there were plays where they gave up, normal stuff. But generally the thing that was getting them was Josh Allen being absurd. The 49ers don't have that to deploy. They have very good players, but it's not like you have to deal with this utter freak show every play. It's Brock Purdy. It's slightly easier than that.
One of the best scramblers in the
I agree with your general premise that the Rams defense is a problem potentially, and the 49ers could have the kind of repeat performance from a week ago. But I think it's slightly different than, it's an easier assignment for them going up against the 49ers offense than it is going up against Josh Allen when he's in the zone the way he was last week.
Bulletin board material for Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I'm sure.
All right, man. Let's pick some games. Pick the game. Rams by 3, Thursday Night Football here.
Can I have a wit out on this? I'm going to go with the Rams, but I think I might flip that if Bosa is playing, which of course we won't know until kickoff.
I'm going to take the Niners. I'm surprised it is this.
I'm also kind of scared by Garendo not playing as well, potentially. I mean, and again, because it's the 49ers, he might play tonight or he might never play again.
Who knows?
Can't guarantee anything.
Could be career ending. I'm going to take the Niners, and Harry's going to take the Rams. So at least we're differing here on some stuff. You had a chance to make a comeback. I need to go.
Well, you got to break the tie with the child, yeah.
Yeah, I do. So big one for Harry and I tonight. All right, that's it. All 16 battled through. You had a couple. I don't know if I'm going to do an instant reaction tonight. We'll see. This might be your
solo.
Go solo. I don't know if the voice will make it, but appreciate everybody for tuning in, bearing with me, sticking with us. Send those stats in. Free merch giveaway next week. And subscribe, thumbs up, do all that fun stuff on YouTube. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. And we'll see you again Monday morning with our Week 15 NFL review. Check the mic.